Chapter 1668. Good, straightforward. Since that's the case, I'll be frank. Today, the embroidered uniform guard has used thunderous methods to capture people, and the people they've captured are all officials of the observation mission heading to Crimson City. Right now, the streets are in an uproar, and everyone is in danger. Some officials came to beg me, hoping that Duke Mao would be merciful. However, I don't know if Duke Mao would give me some face. Of course, I understand the rules and won't make things difficult for you. The so-called understanding the rules naturally meant giving benefits. Mao Mu was very clear on this point. It was still the same sentence. What was the point of the eunuch turning into this androgynous appearance? Wasn't it just to earn more money? With money in hand, anything was worth it, and there was nothing to fear. After understanding that the other party had come to beg for mercy, Mao Mu's anxious heart relaxed. He was truly worried that the other party might have found out something. Although the contact group that Yang Chendong had arranged for him was unknown even in the Yangxia, it was still in the capital. But after all, this group lived in the capital. If someone wanted to investigate, no one could guarantee that they wouldn't give themselves away. Especially since he had become more and more high-profile recently, there were probably many people secretly investigating him. Kai Zhong was a veteran eunuch of power, and he was also in charge of the Imperial Horse Directorate. He had the power to mobilize troops and countless capable people under his command. Who knew if he had received some information that could threaten him? Mao Mu had been worried about this. If that was the case, then he would have to fight even if he couldn't. It was just a pity that he couldn't complete the mission that Yang Chendong had given him. Now that he knew that Kai Zhong had a favor to ask of him, he could finally put down his anxious heart, and his expression became much more relaxed. However, this small change fell into Kai Zhong's eyes. Which of the eunuchs with power wasn't worry-free? Which of them wasn't an expert at reading people's expressions? When Mao Mu relaxed, Kai Zhong's gaze locked onto him. However, he didn't immediately ask, but he was certain that Mao Mu had a secret that he couldn't let others know. Mao Mu didn't know any of this. He was still interested in asking who had the face to invite eunuch Kai. I'm sure Duke Mao knows this person as well. He's the current Minister of Works, Wei Luo. He's also a member of the Observer Group. Although he didn't do anything wrong, it's better to be safe than sorry. He still entrusted himself to our family and is willing to pay 20,000 taels of silver to ensure his safety. What does Duke Mao think about this? Kai Zhong chuckled as he hid what he had just discovered in the depths of his heart and spoke with a smile. Upon hearing that he was pleading for Wei Luo, Mao Mu had a plan in his heart. This time, the Southern Ming Empire had indeed put in a lot of effort in sending the observation team to Crimson City. The fact that all 6 ministers were present was enough to prove everything. Among them, the Minister of War, Kuang Yi, had been sent back halfway because he had angered Yang Chendong. The other 5 ministers had observed the entire process. Now, 4 of the 5 had already been invited to the embroidered uniform guard, leaving only Verlo, so it was no wonder that he was nervous. However, Mao Mu had no intention of dealing with Verlo. After returning from Crimson City, Verlo had privately said that Crimson City was very powerful, that Yangxia was very powerful, and that the Southern Ming Empire couldn't compare. However, Verlo's abilities were truly limited. Under his leadership, the Ministry of Works hadn't made much progress in the past few years, and the cannons they were building were still solid shells. Verlo's strength lay in flattery, using his high position to seize power and amass wealth. During his time in charge of the Ministry of Works, a few capable officials had been suppressed. How could such people be Mao Mu's target? He clearly knew that Yang Chendong's orders were to arrest all capable officials and disrupt the upper echelons of the Southern Ming Empire's political power. Mediocre officials like Verlo naturally wouldn't be affected. On the contrary, such people should have more power. This way, they would be more in line with Yang Xie's interests. Thus, even without Kai Zhong's pleading, Mao Mu wouldn't have made a move against Verlo. He still needed to keep these people to explain to the emperor that not all of the members of the observer group had become disloyal. This was clear proof. Verlo, to be honest, said some things that crossed the line. His name is on the embroidered uniform guard's next arrest list. Although Mao Mu had already decided to let Verlo go and give Kai Zhong face, the process was still important. However, the process was still very important. How to make the other party accept this favor was especially important. Hearing that this was indeed the case, Kai Zhong couldn't help but nod. He didn't know what the emperor thought of the observer group and thought that he wanted to capture them all in one fell swoop. Thus, he naturally didn't doubt Mao Mu's words. Because of this, Kai Zhong's face bloomed into a smile. However, he didn't know how disgusting this smile was in Mao Mu's eyes. I'll have to trouble Duke Mao to put more thought into this matter. I'll remember this favor. Kai Zhong smiled, his eyes revealing an expectant expression. This. Mao Mu first pretended to be in a difficult position. Then, as if he had made a decision, he said, "All right, since even Duke Kai has spoken, I'll do my best." Although he said that he would do his best, since he had spoken, there was nothing that couldn't be done. Immediately, Kai Zhong's smile grew even wider. After discussing business and pocketing the 20,000 taels of silver, Mao Mu left. Seeing his departing figure, Kai Zhong gradually put away the smile on his face. With a snap of his fingers, a sturdy man walked into the small courtyard. Uncle. The man's surname was Kai Gu, and he was Kai Zhong's nephew. After entering the palace, Kai Gu had spent a great deal of effort to find this nephew of his among the common people. Then, he allowed him to live a life of luxury and let him continue the Kai family's bloodline. It could be said that he was Kai Zhong's trusted aide. Keep an eye on this Mao Mu. I keep feeling that there's something about him that no one knows. Thinking of the relaxed expression on Mao Mu's face, Kai Zhong decided to investigate carefully. Perhaps there would be an unexpected surprise. After Mao Mu left Kai Zhong, the corners of his mouth rose into a slight smile. Who did he think he was? Treating him to a cup of tea and taking out 20,000 taels of silver could solve the problem of a minister? Mao Mu was even certain that the Ministry of Works Minister Wei Luo had taken out more than 20,000 taels of silver. It was just that Kai Zhong had embezzled some of it. This was even better. He could kill two birds with one stone. He thought about how to deal with Kai Zhong. He had a feeling that the other party's smile was sinister and vicious, like a poisonous snake that would bite in the dark. If he wasn't careful, he could be poisoned to death. The existence of such a person was definitely a hidden danger to his plan. If possible, he had to get rid of him first. Thinking this, Mao Mu returned to the Empress Palace. When he saw the Emperor's imperial carriage, he knew that the Emperor had come to see Empress Qian. He straightened his body and walked into the palace. As the chief eunuch of Empress Qian's palace, Mao Mu had great prestige here. In addition, he was willing to spend money. The eunuchs here were all very respectful when they saw him, and there was a sense of respect that came from their bones. After all, in a place like the palace where internal strife was fierce and people could die at any time, it was very important to have a good subordinate. It meant that your chances of survival would greatly increase. Duke Mao. Duke Mao is back. There were people constantly greeting him, and Mao Mu also responded with a smile. He walked to the Empress Palace and didn't see Qian Xingbao. He probably wasn't on duty today. Thinking that this was a good thing, he could carry out his plan. Thus, he strode into the palace. In the Empress Palace, Empress Qian was eating with Zhu Qizhen. After seeing Mao Mu walk in, Empress Qian didn't care. She was really an empress who stood aloof from worldly affairs and was extremely kind. She also knew that the eunuchs around her were favored by the emperor and entrusted with important tasks, so she wasn't angry when she didn't see them serving her. If this kind of personality became a concubine in the Qing palace, she probably wouldn't even survive one episode. She would be played to death by others. This subject greets the emperor and empress. Long live the emperor and long live the empress. As soon as he entered the palace, Mao Mu hurriedly knelt on the ground and bowed. Oh, it's beloved official Mao. Quickly get up. Zhu Qizhen glanced at Mao Mu, and his eyes revealed a joyful expression. Then he thought of something and asked, Beloved official Mao, Have the important officials been arranged? Remember, you must interrogate them properly, but you must ask according to their physical condition. Don't be too hasty. Some of them are really too old. This wasn't Zhu Qizhen sympathizing with the subordinates. This came from his heart. For example, the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua. He was now 84 years old, and it was rare that he still had such a healthy body. Perhaps this was because the food he ate didn't have any waste oil or additives. It was all natural. In reality, Wang Zhua's fate had changed because of Yang Chendong's appearance. In history, he died in the Tuma castle. However, in this life, he was saved and came to the capital of the southern Ming dynasty. He had been serving Emperor Yingzong and had lived until now. His health was quite good. From this point, it could be seen that Zhu Qizhen really didn't have anyone he could use. Otherwise, at his age, he would have already retired and returned to his hometown. How could he still serve the court? Mao Mu understood Zhu Qizhen's meaning. He immediately bowed and said, "This subject obeys the decree. There is no rush to interrogate them. First, we must protect their bodies. Wait for them to see our southern Ming dynasty defeat Xianxia and let them know how wrong they are." Zhu Qizhen was only worried that the embroidered uniform guards' methods would be too harsh. As the emperor, he knew some of the embroidered uniform guards' methods. That was why he reminded them. Because once these officials were beaten to death in prison, the other officials would definitely report to the emperor and impeach him. At that time, he would have a headache. Chapter 1669. But unexpectedly, Mao Mu's understanding was to only capture these people and slowly torture them until the day the Southern Ming Empire won and let these officials see his style as the emperor. This also reminded Zhu Qizhen. He nodded and said with satisfaction, "Yes, that's the reason." Beloved official Mao's words are exactly what we want. Come, reward me. This official doesn't dare to ask for a reward. Everything is what this official should do. Right now, the imperial court is going to exterminate the Yang bandits and it's time to use money. This official wishes to wear armor and go to the battlefield to kill the enemy. How can this official still want the emperor's money to satisfy my own selfish desires? Mao Mu said righteously, and the more he spoke, the straighter his body became. Zhu Qizhen was very moved. Good, you have ambition. It's just that we don't agree to let you go to the battlefield to kill the enemy. You are a capable person and should be by our side to share our burdens. Empress, you've really trained a talent. When he was happy, Zhu Qizhen even praised Empress Qian. Seeing Zhu Qizhen smile, Empress Qian was also very happy. She said, "All of this is the emperor's good fortune. The heavens bless the imperial family and the emperor has a good eye for people. It has nothing to do with this concubine." After being flattered by the empress, Zhu Qizhen's mood became even better. He was happy to have such a confidant and a capable subject. However, what made Zhu Qizhen even happier was that Mao Mu once again knelt on the ground and bowed. Reporting to the emperor, this official made a small mistake just now. Just now, eunuch Kai Zhong found this official. Next, Mao Mu recounted what had happened just now from the beginning to the end. Finally, he took out the 20,000 taels of silver and presented it in his hand. This official doesn't know if what I did was right because Minister Wei is indeed innocent. However, when I thought that if I refused to accept this money, the other party would inevitably think too much and I would not be able to work for the emperor with peace of mind. In order to calm the people, I accepted it. Now, I am willing to hand over all of the money. This way, there will be more brave warriors on the front lines. Good. This time, Zhu Qizhen was so happy that he said "good" twice. The way Mao Mu handled matters was indeed to his liking. Not only would he be able to appease the fear in the officials' hearts, but he would also be able to collect the silver to fill the treasury. Wasn't this the best of both worlds? Most importantly, this matter didn't need to be reported. Neither Kai Zhong, who was the middleman, nor Wei Luo, who carefully handed over the silver, would tell anyone about it. However, Mao Mu still reported the matter to him. Wasn't this a sign of loyalty? Mao Mu's indifference towards 20,000 taels of silver proved that he was not greedy. Handing over the money in full proved that the other party was worried about national affairs. Wasn't this kind of loyal and capable eunuch exactly what he needed the most? Speaking of which, Zhu Qijian's personality was somewhat of a perfectionist. He always wished that the people around him were made of stone, that they could not eat or drink, but they could fight on horseback and rule the country as soon as they dismounted. But where in the world could such a perfect person be found? He used to think that Wang Zhen was such a person, but reality proved that he was wrong. Later on, he believed that Qian Sengbao, Qiao Jixiang, and Kai Zhong were such people. However, after some observation, they all had their own shortcomings. Now that Mao Mu had jumped out, he realized that he had found the ideal candidate. Now, he only hated that he hadn't discovered this kind of talent earlier. He had been forced to waste more than 10 years in the palace. Satisfied, he looked at Mao Mu with even more joy. Zhu Qijian didn't know that Mao Mu was now even more important than Qian Sengbao, who had followed him for more than 10 years. Seeing that Zhu Qijian was happy, Mao Mu also raised his head with a happy expression. He displayed the joy of a ruler perfectly. Beloved subject, we have seen everything you have done. Do well, and in the future, you might be able to become a figure like Sheng He. Zhu Qijian was truly happy and compared Mao Mu to the three treasures eunuchs. Mao Mu naturally knelt down in gratitude and called out, "Long live the emperor." Afterwards, he took advantage of Zhu Qijian's happiness to mention that there were still a few officials who hadn't been arrested because their ranks were low. He also said that today's matter shouldn't be spread. Otherwise, if eunuch Kai Zhong found out, he would lose face and appear out of place. It would be difficult to carry out his work in the future. Of course, Zhu Qijian would follow Mao Mu's instructions. He said that he saw Mao Mu's loyalty and told him to do things without worry. He knew in his heart that he wouldn't let a capable official be wronged. He also said that the war was imminent. Anyone who had problems must be arrested, even those who suspected problems must be arrested. According to the previous method, they didn't need to be severely punished. He told them to wait and see how he defeated Bugnam of Gojoseon and Yang Chendong. Also, if there were still people who interceded and gave money, he should accept it. The money in the national treasury was getting less and less, and he was eager to replenish it. Zhu Qijian finally left happily. After Mao Mu helped Empress Qian rest, he left the palace. The palace was forbidden, and it was very difficult for ordinary people to enter and leave the palace. However, with Mao Mu's current status, unless the emperor specifically ordered that no one was allowed to move, it was very easy to leave the palace. After leaving the palace, Mao Mu first brought a few of his eunuchs to the embroidered uniform guard. Coincidentally, Shen Nantang, Wu Ben, Luo Zhu, and the others were all there. He told them about the emperor's decree, which was to take care of the old officials and not let anything happen to them in prison. They could consider giving each of them a single room so that they could come out every day and eat and drink as much as possible. If they didn't have enough money, they could inform their family to send it. Also, from tomorrow onwards, they would continue to arrest people according to the list. Of course, that list was provided by Mao Mu and also by the Yangxia Intelligence Department. They were all capable officials, and what they needed to do now was to catch them all in one fell swoop. In short, it was a sentence that would paralyze the Southern Ming dynasty, break the tacit cooperation between the various departments, and thus reduce the Southern Ming dynasty's fighting strength. Mao Mu's words fell into the ears of the embroidered uniform guard, which was equivalent to an imperial edict. Immediately, everyone bowed their heads and cupped their fists in agreement. After seeing that there was nothing else to do in the embroidered uniform guard, Mao Mu left. Then, seemingly unintentionally, he went to the silk shop that he often went to. Mao Mu didn't know that behind him, Kai Gu was quietly following him with a few trusted subordinates. When he saw him enter the embroidered uniform guard, he had been waiting outside. When he saw him come out and didn't immediately return to the palace, he followed him. Mao Mu was still a little inexperienced, and the results he obtained during the day made him a little arrogant. Right now, He was anxious to report all of this to Bugnam of Gojoseon and receive praise and recognition. The few eunuchs around him had received a lot of benefits from Mao Mu. Now that Mao Mu's status had skyrocketed, not only the empress, but even the emperor relied heavily on him. Naturally, they would follow Mao Mu wherever he went. Although the sky was already dark, it wasn't yet time for curfew on the streets. The silk shop's door was still open, and Mao Mu led a few eunuchs inside. Take a good look and see if there are any good satin brocades. Pick out some and send them to the Empress Palace. After some casual instructions, Mao Mu, as usual, was warmly invited by the shopkeeper into the inner room to drink tea. Outside the silk shop, Kai Gu and his people couldn't see what was going on. After all, they knew that the Empress liked satin brocades, and would sometimes make them into finished products for money to support the palace's expenses. Unable to see what was going on or where the problem was, Kai Gu decided to sneak into the silk shop and see what Mao Mu was doing. This was his uncle's intention, and he had to obey. As to whether or not it would be dangerous, what a joke. He had learned martial arts from an expert since he was a child. The so-called "the skilled are bold" was used to describe people like him. The people surrounded the silk shop from different directions, and then used what they had learned. They either climbed over the wall or jumped onto the roof to find what Mao Mu was doing at this moment. At this time, Mao Mu was completely unaware of what was happening outside. He was talking to the shopkeeper of the silk shop, who was also the leader of the contact group, about what had happened today. He was going to report it to Yang Chendong in the form of a telegram. Kai Ge's skills were indeed not bad. Although he was tall and sturdy, his body was actually very agile. After a few jumps, he reached the top of the silk shop. Then, he lifted the roof tiles one by one, trying to find where Mao Mu was. Finally, after flipping over a few tiles, they saw Mao Mu with his hands behind his back under the light of the coal lamp. He was saying something, and there was someone sitting in front of him. There was something in front of him that they didn't know what it was called, and it was beeping and fiddling with it. Because of his lack of knowledge, Kai Gu didn't know what a telegram was, so he wanted to take a closer look. He lowered his head and wanted to take a closer look, but then he felt a pain in his neck, followed by a wave of dizziness, and he fainted. Cold water splashed on Kai Ge's face, and he slowly woke up. He saw Mao Mu sitting in front of him. There were a few big men standing next to him. One of them was like an iron tower, and the muscles all over his body seemed to be about to burst out of his clothes. Based on his intuition, he knew that these people were not to be trifled with. When he thought about how he was knocked unconscious without even feeling it, he was even more certain of the other party's strength. At this moment, he had to be scared. He could only show a trace of a fawning expression and said, "Mr. Mao, all of this is a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Mao Mu suddenly stood up, very angry. How dangerous tonight was. If it wasn't for his heavy work, and if it wasn't for the fact that Bugnam of Gojoseon and Yang Chendong had considered this and sent the Wolf Fang special forces to assist him early, he would have suffered a great loss. Not only would his identity be exposed, but the task would also not be completed. In that case, more than 10 years of hiding would be ruined. Although Yang Chendong might not blame him afterwards, he would definitely blame himself. Chapter 1670. He was angry at his own carelessness and also angry at Kai Zhong's ruthlessness. On the surface, Kai Zhong thanked him, but later on, he arranged for people to investigate him. He was really a dog that bit but didn't bark. Feeling that it was about time, Mao Mu knew that he couldn't stay for long. He looked at the big man beside him and said, "Captain Tai, I'll leave everything here to you. This person is the nephew of head eunuch Kai Zhong. He must know a lot of secrets. Don't worry, eunuch Mao." Captain Tai, who was also the captain of the special forces, Tai Hu, grinned. For such an interrogation, their special forces had their own means. Some were taught by Yang Chendong, and some were figured out by themselves. But no matter what, no one who was questioned by them could withstand it. Seeing that Mao Mu was about to leave, Kai Gu panicked. He knew that if he really left and handed himself over to the big man, he wouldn't be able to die a good death. So he shouted loudly, "Eunuch Mao, you can't do this to me. I didn't come alone this time. I brought a few subordinates with me. They are all good at martial arts. If I don't go back, they will definitely report to my uncle. Then, you will be in trouble." "Oh. Are you talking about the 5 people who came with you? That's called good at martial arts. Huh, they are just like you. You don't even know how you were knocked unconscious. How dare you threaten others?" Taihu sneered. Needless to say, if he dared to say that, the other 5 people must have been restrained. Perhaps, they were already being tortured. Mao Mu didn't care about this. He strode out of the basement and walked out of the silk shop. He brought the eunuch who had just picked out the brocade and went straight to the palace. Mao Mu was back. Kai Zhong also received the news. But he didn't see his nephew. He thought that he stayed in that woman's stomach again, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But until noon the next day, he still didn't see his nephew. He started to get anxious and sent many people to look for him, but there was no useful news. Kai Zhong didn't understand what was going on. He wanted to look for Mao Mu, but he sent people to spy on him. It was uncertain whether Mao Mu knew about it. Even if he knew, would he tell him where Kai Gu was? He was the one being unreasonable. Investigate. Even if we have to turn the entire capital upside down, we have to find him. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Kai Ge's heart ached when he said this. That was the only heir of the Kai family, and they were counting on him to carry on the family line. Now, he couldn't even find him. How was he going to explain this to his dead brother? Mao Mu ignored Kai Gu as if nothing had happened. He continued to do what he was supposed to do. For a time, more and more people were being arrested. At first, it was only the officials of the observer group. Now, some officials who were not part of the observer group were also being arrested. The explanation given by the embroidered uniform guards was that these officials had been bewitched by the observation team's officials and their hearts had begun to waver. They were unstable people. However, if someone could calm down and think about it, they would realize that those who were arrested were undoubtedly capable or officials who were more competent in their posts. However, at this time, the brocade guard was capturing people everywhere. The officials of the capital were all in danger, so no one had the time to analyze these matters. Right now, they were most afraid that a group of embroidered uniform guards would suddenly come knocking on their door and arrest them. After all, out of the 6 ministers, 4 of them had already been captured. Anything could happen. These officials didn't think that those who were arrested were all capable officials. Instead, they began to analyze how they could avoid being arrested. Kuang Yi was the Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince and also the Minister of War. He was also a member of the observer group. However, since he was expelled, he had already made his stance clear. It was normal for the brocade guard to not make a move on him. Minister Wei Luo was different. He led the officials of the Ministry of Works to participate in the observer group. After returning, he wrote a memorial to the emperor, requesting for more investment in the Ministry of Works, more money to develop weapons, and to raise the status of technical talents in society. These were all things he learned in Qiqian City. In other words, he believed that the Yangtze's industrial and manufacturing capabilities were far superior to the southern Ming dynasties. How could a minister who only praised the Yangtze and belittled the southern Ming dynasty not be arrested? How did he manage to save his own skin? Since someone asked this question, someone else would answer it. Soon, Wei Luo sent 50,000 taels of silver to eunuch Kai Zhong. Kai Zhong acted as the middleman and pleaded with the brocade guard's eunuch Mao Mu. Now that they knew that sending money could guarantee their safety, the officials who hadn't been implicated began to take action. They used various connections to find Xian Sengbao or Kai Zhong, asking them to pass on a message. There were also people who directly went to find Mao Mu and brought large amounts of money. Eunuch Mao Mu, who no one paid attention to at first, quickly became one of the most influential chief eunuchs. His status even surpassed Kai Zhong's and was second only to Qian Xingbao. When large amounts of money and favors were brought to him, Mao Mu didn't let money get to his head. Mao Mu was very clear that he was only where he was today because of Yang Chendong's support. Otherwise, he would still be a nameless eunuch. Perhaps he wouldn't have come to the southern Ming dynasty and would still be in Baiming's capital. It was even possible that he would have died in the internal strife among the eunuchs. Yang Chendong had given him a new life. Now that Yang Xia was very powerful, it could be imagined that as long as he followed closely, his future would be limitless. His future would definitely be brighter than his current position in the southern Ming dynasty. How could Mao Mu, who had steeled his heart to follow Yang Chendong, care about these silver taels that were delivered to his door? Not only did he not care, he even decided to use these silver taels to make an issue out of it. Thus, he took advantage of an opportunity when Qian Xingbao wasn't on duty and secretly met with Zhu Qizhen. While handing over a large amount of silver taels, he also sold off the officials who had sent the money. When the 1.5 million taels of silver taels were placed on the table, Zhu Qizhen was shocked. Previously, Wei Luo was a minister and had only sent 20,000 taels of silver taels. However, when he looked at the list that Mao Mu had presented, it showed that a fourth-rank official in the capital had sent 50,000 taels of silver just to buy his own safety. Was it really worth it to pay so much? Furthermore, where did these officials get the money? It was impossible to rely on salary alone, so they could only use power and corruption to get it. When he thought about how there were so many corrupt officials under his command, Zhu Qizhen was very angry. He was an idealist and wanted nothing more than to immediately issue an edict to investigate and punish these officials. However, after he calmed down, he still didn't do so. If these officials were punished, who would take care of them for him? He couldn't possibly do everything himself as the emperor, right? Forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, Zhu Qizhen looked at the list in his hand and comforted himself. Fortunately, there are only 30 or so officials here. Reality proves that most of the officials are honest. Originally, this was meant to comfort himself, but he didn't expect that reality would quickly slap him in the face. Mao Mu, who had been waiting there, opened his mouth again and said, "Reporting to your majesty, these are only the officials who came directly to this subject. This is only the first batch. I believe that there will be a second and third batch. Because of this subject status, there aren't many people who came to this subject. The officials who came to find Eunuch Qian and Eunuch Kai are the ones who can be called many. It seems that there are more than 100 of them." What? Zhu Qizhen, who had just sat down, couldn't help but tilt his body. He almost lost his seat and slipped onto the dragon throne. Fortunately, he reached out his hands in time and stabilized his body. However, he was already unable to vent his anger. Could it be that my officials already don't know what it means to be clean and honest? Your Majesty, please quell your anger. Seeing Zhu Qizhen's angry dragon face, Mao Mu knew that he had to pour some water on him to calm his anger. Even if it wasn't for others, even if it was for Yang Chendong's grand plan, he had to do this. He couldn't really have Zhu Qizhen kill all of these officials who had sent gifts, right? If that really happened, not only would Zhu Qizhen not kill them, he would also have to reflect on whether it was right to have the embroidered uniform guards arrest them. If that really happened, the grand plan to weaken the southern Ming Empire before the war would be interrupted. This was something that Mao Mu definitely didn't want to see. After mulling over what to say, Mao Mu opened his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, in reality, this is just everyone feeling insecure. According to this subject's knowledge, some officials, in order to save their lives and gather money, even sold their ancestral property just to gather enough money to save their lives. This is enough to show that there are still quite a few honest officials who are serving the country. It's just the general trend. This subject thinks that we might have pushed them too far. Therefore, this subject believes that we should arrest those who have problems and just take the money from those who don't have problems and add it to the country's treasury. This way, those officials who have no money and have nothing to do will definitely do their best to be loyal to your Majesty. They already have no capital and have no other choice but to wholeheartedly serve the country. Your Majesty." When Zhu Qizhen heard this, the anger on his face faded a lot. That's right. Beloved official Mao's words are reasonable. Since that's the case, we will allow it. They could continue to find problematic officials and stabilize the court so that they wouldn't be frightened by Yang Xie before the war. They could also collect a large sum of money for the court's use. It would be strange if Zhu Qizhen didn't agree to such a result. Seeing that Zhu Qizhen had agreed, Mao Mu immediately praised the emperor for his wisdom. He then said, "Your Majesty, it's true that this subject's method is good, but this subject will inevitably offend Eunuch Qian and Eunuch Kai. If they complain to your Majesty, I'm afraid this subject's shoulders aren't wide enough and hard enough. It's fine. Beloved official, you do things wholeheartedly for the country. We know this. Just do it boldly." On the other hand, they dared to keep a portion of the money in their hands even though it was clearly given by the officials. We are already benevolent for not finding fault with them. Zhu Qizhen waved his hand magnanimously. He increasingly found that Mao Mu was a subject who wholeheartedly served the country and was wholeheartedly loyal to him. He wasn't greedy and didn't take the money. He handed over as much money as the officials gave him. Just this point alone made him much better than the others. Chapter 1671. Take that Kai Zhong for example. Wei Luo had given him 50,000 taels of silver, but he had only given Mao Mu 20,000 taels of silver. He had actually pocketed more than half of it, much to Zhu Qizhen's displeasure. With these 30,000 taels of silver, the imperial court could do a few more things, could it not? Mao Mu had been waiting for Zhu Qizhen to say this. This way, his position would be secure. He immediately kowtowed again, praising the emperor's wisdom. Crimson City. Yang Qindong had already returned. He had spent 3 days on the sea and learned that Yang Xie was very stable. Even though he had not appeared and his safety was unknown, under the leadership of the Crown Prince Yang Bo, everyone was carrying out their duties. The only difference was that there were many more ships on the sea. They were the search party, used to search for Yang Qindong. Yang Xie's situation was stable, and Yang Qindong was very satisfied with this result. He decided to return to Crimson City. Since his son had passed the test, and the officials of Yang Xie had also passed the test, there was no need for him to hide. After all, there were still many important things to do. Yang Qindong's reappearance on the docks of Crimson City naturally drew cheers from the officials of Yang Xie. Yang Xie had been created by Yang Qindong, and he was the backbone of everyone. In this aspect, Yang Bo could not compare. But after this incident, Yang Qindong could see that Yang Bo was a promising talent. He had decided to slowly hand over his authority so that he could train Yang Bo. Not only him, his descendants would have to do the same, and that was to hand over power while they were still alive. Speaking of which, in history, the change of dynasties was the easiest time to cause problems. When an old emperor passed away and a new emperor ascended the throne, a single mistake would result in a rain of blood and a sea of heads falling to the ground. When one's strength was severely damaged, it would often take a long time for one to recover. And at this time, the new emperor was old, and it wouldn't be long before the old and the new were replaced, causing more heads to fall to the ground. How could one prevent this from happening? Yang Qindong's idea was to transfer his power to the old emperor while he was still alive, becoming the retired emperor. Of course, there were drawbacks to doing this. For example, how could 2 tigers live on the same mountain? If the 2 emperors didn't like each other, wouldn't there be internal strife? For this reason, Yang Qindong had thought of a solution. For example, before the old emperor passed away, he could retain a portion of his military power. If there was a major incident, he could skip the command of the new emperor and so on. This should be enough to protect himself. Of course, this was still an immature idea. More importantly, Yang Qindong believed that by doing this, they could avoid the problems that would arise when the 2 emperors were replaced. Otherwise, it would be like Kangshi's edict of succession in history. One said that the throne would be passed to the 14th elder brother, while the other said that the throne would be passed to the 4th elder brother. Even until now, there were still many opinions. Yang Qindong returned to Xiqian City, and the Beiming Imperial Court's observation group also set off. The Tianjin Guard boarded the ship and headed straight for Xiqian City. On this point, Zhu Qizhen and Zhu Qiyu both had the same idea, which was to know oneself and know one's enemy to win 100 battles. Perhaps they both knew that the battle with Yang Xia was unavoidable, so it was naturally a good thing to know about it in advance. As for the observation group, the two emperors gave great support. Different from the last time, Yang Qindong personally came to welcome the Southern Ming observation group. Moreover, he brought his wife, Queen Hu Yan, to the docks. It was because Hu Yan's relatives were in the Beiming observation group. This time, her grandfather, Hu Shao, was in the observation group. It had to be said that the lifespan of people in this era wasn't very long. There were many people who died in their 40s, and there were even some who died in their 30s. However, most of them were ordinary people who couldn't eat well and couldn't afford to wear clothes. Those officials were not included. Not only that, but there were also some people who lived very long lives. For example, Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Shao, was one of them. In history, he lived for a full 85 years. Because of Yang Qindong's arrival, he unexpectedly broke through this age limit. Now, he was already 92 years old. It was said that his body was still quite good. At the very least, he could still walk with the support of others and didn't collapse on the bed. Hu Shao could be said to be the oldest among the officials. Adding on the fact that he had entered politics at a young age, he could already be considered an old official of 4 dynasties. This time, when he found out that there was an opportunity to enter Xiqian City, he took the initiative to apply to the emperor. When Zhu Qiyu had already collapsed on the bed, his body gradually weakening, Crown Prince Zhu Jianji considered that Hu Shao was already quite old. Even if he stayed in Beiming, he wouldn't be able to become an official, so he agreed to his application. However, he made it clear that only Hu Shao from the Hu family could go. The others could join the observation group. From this, it could be seen that Zhu Jianji was still quite wary of Yang Qindong. Leaving the Hu family behind was also a method to keep him in check. Speaking of this Zhu Jianji, in history, he died prematurely at the age of 7. It was also because of his relationship with Yang Qindong that he took out Western medicine to save his life. Now, he was already a young man of 20 years old. Since her grandfather had come, as his granddaughter, Hu Yan naturally had to come out to greet him. Considering the special nature of Hu Zhao's identity and his age, Yang Qindong also came along. Hu Yan was so moved that she broke into tears. Yang Qindong and the queen both came out to greet them, causing the people on the docks to gather together and become even more magnificent. When they saw a ship coming from afar, someone on the docks had already reported it. At this moment, Hu Yan tightly grabbed Yang Qindong's arm, appearing very excited. 1 year had passed just like that. Finally, she could see her family again. The excitement in Hu Yan's heart could be imagined. Yang Qindong naturally didn't feel any excitement. Not only did Zhu Jianji not allow Hu Yan's parents to come with the observation group, even his brothers and sisters weren't allowed to join the observation group. In other words, the Yang family was still in Beiming's capital. Although Yang Qindong had already made arrangements for them to not put their lives in danger or make their lives difficult, it was still somewhat regretful that they couldn't see them. As for Beiming, Yang Qindong's plan was even bigger. Whether it was in the imperial court or in the army, he had arranged his own chess pieces, and their status wasn't low. As long as the time was right, they could launch a counterattack at any time. However, Yang Qindong didn't make a move. He was waiting for the day when Zhu Qiyu died. At that time, the young emperor, Zhu Jianji, would need some time to take control of the imperial court. At that time, Yang Xia's army would attack. Zhu Qiyu was ordered to be in danger, and with Yang Qindong's help, he was able to turn the tide. These years, he had worked hard for the country and had a lot of prestige. At the very least, Beiming could be united with him as the core. Once he was gone, with his useless son, the unity of the country would only be on the surface. He needed to wait for the right time to attack Beiming, but he didn't need to be so polite to the Southern Ming. With Zhu Qixian's imperial edict in Chao Jixiang's hands, Yang Qindong had enough reason to attack the southern Ming. The only reason he hadn't made a move now was because the military supplies weren't in place yet. Now, it seemed that this was the time. When he thought about attacking the southern Ming, Yang Qindong couldn't help but think of Mao Mu. This chess piece that he had arranged many years ago had finally come into play, and its power was far greater than he had imagined. Before the battle, the southern Ming already had internal strife. The people's hearts weren't united, and everyone was in danger. Once Yang Xie's army arrived, the result could be imagined. This made Yang Qindong very satisfied with Mao Mu. At this time, Mao Mu was still busy at Yingtian Manor in the capital. Whether it was Qian Xingbao or Kai Zhong, they didn't know that Mao Mu had secretly met with the emperor and handed over the ransom money he received. They were still using this opportunity to make a big profit. This was especially true for Qian Xingbao. Relying on his identity as the one who supported Mao Mu, he didn't give Mao Mu a single tael of silver. He only handed over the list of officials that he wanted to protect, saying that they were all his people, so he had to be magnanimous. Under Qian Xingbao's forceful attitude, Mao Mu chose to continue to endure. At the same time, he made a detailed report to Zhu Qixian. In his own words, the reason why he could be where he was today was all because of the emperor's great kindness. He only listened to the emperor. As for other people, no matter how great their kindness was to him, he would at most help them within his authority. However, when it came to imperial power, he would still choose to listen to the emperor without hesitation. When Zhu Qixian heard Mao Mu's confession, he was very happy. He praised Mao Mu as the most loyal official in the current court and told him to be at ease. Zhu Qixian valued Mao Mu more and more. He began to have opinions about Qian Xingbao. This man, he was always afraid of being compared to others. With this comparison, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Qian Xingbao, who seemed to be good at everything in the past, now made Zhu Qixian feel dissatisfied with everything he did. He even thought about whether or not he should let Mao Mu replace him. Compared to Qian Xingbao's bossy attitude, Kai Zhong was more restrained. At the very least, he would give a portion of the benefits to Mao Mu. However, no matter what he did, he had already entered Mao Mu's death list. This was not only because Kai Zhong had sent his nephew Kai Gu to follow him. More importantly, he had reached out to the discipline prison of the embroidered uniform guard. He had bribed the embroidered uniform guard's jailers to meet Chao Jixiang's nephew, Chao Xian, who was the son of the former embroidered uniform guard commander Chao Zheng. He wanted to use him for his own purposes. In the Chao family, other than Chao Jixiang, there was also Chao Xian. It was Chao Xian who had led people to ambush Yang Qindong in Baiming. It was just that they had not succeeded. Kai Zhong had found this person as a helper. It was clear that he had good taste. However, he had angered Mao Mu. Not to mention that the Chao family was now Mao Mu's mortal enemy. Once he ransomed Chao Xian, it would directly threaten his own safety. Just the fact that Chao Xian had once ambushed Yang Qindong made it impossible to let him live. Chapter 1672. The reason why Chao Xian was still alive in the discipline commission of the embroidered uniform guard was because Mao Mu wanted to personally hand him over to Yang Qindong. But since Kai Zhong wanted to do this, he had to make a move in advance. First, he sent a telegram to Yang Qindong to ask if he could kill Chao Xian now. Then, he found eunuch Qian Xingbao and explained what Kai Zhong would do next. Once Chao Xian was released, he would be the first to come after him. Next, he would not let Qian Xingbao go. Qian Xingbao was not an ordinary eunuch. Although he was not a man, he still had a residence outside the palace for his face. Not only that, but he also kept a few beauties in his residence. Although he could not do anything, he could still let them pour him tea and massage his legs during his break. That was also a kind of enjoyment. Once Chao Xian was released, who knew whether or not he would ambush him outside the residence for revenge? This was someone who even dared to ambush Bugnam of Gojoseon. Thinking of this, Qian Sengbao's face revealed a fierce gaze. Kill him now. But this person is wanted by eunuch Kai Zhong. Mao Mu pretended to be in a difficult position. No matter, I will talk to him. In short, we have to nip any danger in the bud. Qian Sengbao's voice carried a sinister intent. Now, he had borrowed Mao Mu's name to get a lot of money. He wanted to enjoy his life and did not want anyone to threaten his safety. Understood. Mao Mu nodded and agreed. What happened next was simple. After dinner, Chao Xian died in the discipline prison. When the news reached Kai Zhong's ears, he was naturally furious. Even if he closed his eyes and used his toes to think, he knew that this was Mao Mu's doing. Do you really think your wings are strong? Gritting his teeth, the angry Kai Zhong decided to unite more eunuchs to deal with Mao Mu. There were 24 eunuchs in the entire group of eunuchs. Each eunuch had a chief eunuch and 1/3 of them listened to him. Once they joined forces, Mao Mu would have a hard time in the palace. Scheming against scheming, there would always be countless sinister methods. Most of the time, such methods could even take a person's life. For example, if the eunuch in charge of the food shop wanted to make things difficult for Mao Mu, then in the entire empress palace, other than the master, the food that the other eunuchs and palace maids ate was either too salty to swallow or too bitter to curse. In addition, there would be various problems with the use of the eunuchs and palace maids. In this way, it wouldn't be long before all the eunuchs and palace maids in the empress palace hated Mao Mu. If that was the case, who would listen to him? When the problem affected the master, Mao Mu would fall out of favor and even be replaced. After all, Kai Zhong had been in business for so many years. He had many loyal followers in the 24 prisons. Once he made up his mind to deal with someone, the consequences would be very serious. At this time, Kai Zhong had already begun to imagine Mao Mu begging him. At that time, he would use his actions to tell the other party that he was not someone to be trifled with. Unfortunately, just as Kai Zhong gathered the eunuchs who listened to his orders, Qian Sengbao sent someone to deliver a message. The general idea was that Mao Mu was now a favorite of the emperor and was doing something important. If anyone wanted to find trouble with him, they would be going against the emperor. As the chief eunuch, he would have to punish those who didn't open their eyes according to the family rules. Qian Sengbao gave a very good reason, so everyone knew that Mao Mu was now the director of the embroidered uniform guard and was arresting people every day. From time to time, the emperor would call him for questioning. With such an excuse, it made things difficult for the other eunuchs. In addition, Mao Mu wasn't idle during this period of time. He used money to open a path and really roped in 3 chief eunuchs. When he and Qian Sengbao combined their power, they suppressed Kai Zhong. Just like that, a plot against them in the dark ended before it could even begin to take action. Kai Zhong, who was covered in dirt, lost his prestige in the entire group of eunuchs because of this. Many people had already begun to wonder if they should change their allegiance. In ancient times, people paid attention to heaven, earth, ruler, family, and teacher. Often, they wouldn't change their allegiance for the rest of their lives. Many people's orders would even change according to the fate of their teacher. But to the eunuchs, this was bullshit. They were a group of people who changed their helm according to the wind. When you were in power, they couldn't wait to become lapdogs to flatter you. On the other hand, when you were in power, people who didn't know you would step on you in order to vent their resentment of a man who was no longer a normal man. Feeling the change in the other chief eunuchs, Kai Zhong became anxious. He knew that if he didn't do anything, what awaited him would be the eunuchs being disloyal to him. In the end, he was afraid that he would be abandoned by everyone and wouldn't be able to die a good death even if he wanted to. In for a penny, in for a pound. Since these chief eunuchs were unreliable, Kai Zhong used his authority to mobilize soldiers and horses to begin to obstruct the embroidered uniform guard from handling the case. The imperial horse supervisor was in charge of the imperial stable and the commander's seal, so he had his own private army. It was just that the number of people was small. Under normal circumstances, without a decree, they didn't dare to mobilize privately. But this time, in order to stifle Mao Mu's development and show his strength, Kai Zhong couldn't care less. Mao Mu didn't think that Kai Zhong would be so daring as to mobilize the Imperial Horse Supervisor's men without a decree. For a while, many of the embroidered uniform guard who had been sent out to capture people came back saying that they had encountered difficulties. The people they wanted to capture were protected and they couldn't act without orders. Mao Mu was worried that he wouldn't have any evidence to use against him. After hearing the reports from his subordinates, he went straight to the Qingjing Hall where the emperor worked. Today, Qian Sanbao was on duty. He was standing beside Zhu Qizhen, waiting on the emperor to read memorials. A young eunuch came to report that eunuch Mao had come. "Let him in," Zhu Qizhen said without raising his head. But he quickly stopped writing. He wondered if Mao Mu had come to give him money. Did he need to send Qian Sanbao away? After all, this great companion wasn't bad. The only thing was that he was a bit greedy. He had always wanted the other party to take the initiative to hand over the money he had embezzled. Unfortunately, he hadn't seen any movement. If Mao Mu really came to give him money and he saw it, what would he do? Even if he handed over the money at that time, it would be equivalent to being forced. It wouldn't be considered taking the initiative to admit his mistake. While Zhu Qizhen was still thinking about these things, Mao Mu had already walked into the main hall. Then, with a plop, he knelt on the ground and said with an aggrieved expression, "Long live the emperor. Beloved official, why do you have to be so courteous? Is something the matter?" Zhu Qizhen's face carried a trace of surprise. Although the Great Ming Dynasty had a ceremony of kneeling, it wasn't done every time they saw the emperor. It was only done when they were particularly excited or angry. Zhu Qizhen felt that something was wrong, so he asked this question. Using this question, Mao Mu raised his head and said, "Emperor, the embroidered uniform guard received orders to arrest people. Although there have been more arrests recently, they are all suspicious. There are also some people who have solid evidence and can be punished at any time. But I don't know why the emperor suddenly stopped arresting people and didn't give this official a decree. Right now, this official really doesn't know what to do." Huh? Zhu Qizhen was dumbfounded by these words. What stop arresting people? He didn't give such a decree. Out of curiosity, he asked, "Beloved official, what is going on? Tell me in detail." "Yes." Looking at Zhu Qizhen's confused expression, Mao Mu knew that this was done by Kai Zhong on his own. Since this was the case, this matter was easy to handle. This time, the other party definitely wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Although he couldn't rely on this matter to defeat the other party, he could at least suppress the other party's momentum and let more eunuchs see who was the sturdier one. Don't underestimate this influence. When it came to the ability to take advantage of the situation, if eunuchs said they were second, no one would dare to say they were first. Mao Mu immediately told him about the problems the embroidered uniform guards encountered when they went out to investigate and arrest people. According to the soldiers who obstructed them, it was an order from the Imperial Horse Supervisor. Now, the embroidered uniform guards can't do their job as scheduled. Some of the officials' attitudes have even become arrogant. On one hand, they say that the Yangxia is stronger than the Southern Ming. On the other hand, they also say that the Southern Ming court is wrong and the embroidered uniform guards are incompetent. They say that they can't even unify the government. How can such a country talk about winning wars? Enough. Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting on the dragon throne, was angry. Of course, this anger wasn't directed at Mao Mu. He hated Kai Zhong for not being able to accomplish anything, but more than enough to spoil things. He actually tried to tear down his own people. It was truly infuriating to hear. Seeing that Zhu Qizhen was angry, Mao Mu tactfully shut his mouth. However, he didn't forget to look at Qian Sanbao, who was standing to the side. Qian Sanbao understood the meaning behind Zhu Qizhen's gaze and knew that it was time for him to make an appearance. He nodded lightly and said, "Your Majesty, it must be said that eunuch Kai has been a little arrogant recently. He relied on the little bit of merit he made in the past and didn't put anyone in his eyes. Especially recently, I heard that many officials have already sought him out. There are even quite a few who want to acknowledge him as their godfather. Hee hee, how laughable is it when you think about it? A scholar actually wants to acknowledge Kai Zhong, who is illiterate, as his godfather. If this trend isn't properly suppressed, I'm afraid that there will be trouble in the end. It might even lead to a conflict between factions. This subject is thinking that there won't be a day when these officials won't even look at imperial edicts. They won't know who your majesty is and will have to act according to his wishes. Qian Sengbao's words weren't just sprinkling salt on the wound. He was clearly stabbing it with a knife. Moreover, he was stabbing it again and again, as if he wanted to chop the flesh into pieces. What Zhu Qizhan disliked the most and was most apprehensive about was fighting between factions. It wasn't just him. Any emperor would be displeased. Chapter 1673. Once there was a factional conflict, not only would it cause chaos in the court, it would also create an awkward situation where the emperor could not leave the palace. Since ancient times, whenever there was a sign of such a conflict, it would be severely suppressed. Many times, the result of such suppression was the loss of the emperor's power and the weakening of the country. With so many examples from the past, how could Zhu Qizhan tolerate it? He immediately slammed the table and said, "Great companion, please write a decree to remove Kai Zhong from the position of imperial horse supervisor." For the time being, when he said this, Zhu Qizhan first looked at Mao Mu, then shook his head slightly and said, "Great companion, you will take over." Mao Mu had not been in power for long, and he was busy with the matters of the embroidered uniform guard. Zhu Qizhan thought about it and did not give him more responsibilities, so this task fell to Qian Sengbao. No one would complain about not having enough power. When Zhu Qizhan issued this decree, Qian Sengbao was so happy that he immediately knelt and thanked the emperor. Mao Mu left with satisfaction. When he left, Qian Sengbao took the initiative to send him off. The smile on his face was enough to squeeze all the mosquitoes that dared to provoke him. It could be seen how happy he was. Before Mao Mu rose to power, although Qian Sengbao was the chief eunuch, he had Chao Jixiang and Kai Zhong, the two supervisors of power under him. Most of the time, they wouldn't even give him face. Compared to Wang Zhen, who was the emperor's first companion in the past, he was far inferior. In the end, Qian Sengbao was forced to work around the emperor and look after his own affairs. Now, after Mao Mu came to power, he received money and power. If he continued to work hard, there would be a day when he would become the second Wang Zhen. How could Qian Sengbao not be happy? When he saw Mao Mu, how could he not have a smile on his face? Mao Mu was very modest. Although in his plan, this Qian Sengbao had to be taken down. But the meal had to be eaten bite by bite. He immediately smiled and said, "All of this is because Qian Sengbao has the emperor's heart. It should have been like this long ago. Qian Sengbao has been careful and conscientious by the emperor's side all these years. Now, you are only a eunuch of the imperial horse supervisor, which is very normal." That's right, Kai Zhong had been in the imperial horse directorate for many years, so he must have quite a few trusted aides. Eunuch Qian still had to display his ruthless methods on this trip. He absolutely could not give the other party a chance to rise from the ashes. If one day His Majesty remembers the other party's good points and uses him again, then he will definitely take revenge for what happened today. The congratulations from before were just pleasantries. The reminder at the end was the most important. Mao Mu wanted to see Qian Sengbao and Kai Zhong fight each other so that he could reap the benefits like a fisherman. Don't worry, this duke is very capable. As Qian Sengbao spoke, his eyes had already narrowed into slits. Thinking about it, it made sense. For an old fox like him who was used to seeing eunuchs fighting for benefits, once he made a move, Kai Zhong would definitely not be able to stand it. Presumably, those eunuchs who belonged to him would also face the danger of being uprooted. Mao Mu left happily. Now that he had achieved his goal and no one was holding him back, he had to speed up the brocade guard's work. Once he captured all the capable officials in the capital, he would make a move on the local officials in the provinces. When he wanted Yang Xie's army to pave the way, no one would dare to stand in his way. Qian Sengbao did not disappoint. Soon after, he took the imperial edict written by Zhu Qizhen and went to the imperial horse directorate. From then on, Kai Zhong became one of the chief eunuchs with no power. The ferocity of the situation was completely out of Kai Zhong's expectations. He was still waiting for Mao Mu to come and beg for mercy. Who would have thought that Mao Mu would ignore him and directly report the matter to His Majesty? His Majesty even listened to Mao Mu's words and directly punished Kai Zhong. Although he did not do anything to Kai Zhong, when he was stripped of his power, it was like taking away half his life. What made Kai Zhong even angrier was Qian Sengbao's actions. In just half a day's time, the entire imperial horse directorate had been replaced. Those who were loyal to him had been demoted to other directorates, and had been demoted from eunuchs with real power to minor eunuchs. Based on the history of internal strife among eunuchs, it was needless to say that after being demoted from a high and mighty position, what awaited them would be worse than death. It would definitely be a fate worse than death. Because of this, even if there was a day when His Majesty remembered him again and ordered him to return to the Imperial Horse Directorate, it would take a lot of time for him to raise a group of people again. Kai Zhong was still Kai Zhong. He would not resign himself to death like this. He had to retaliate. He was already thinking of what to say. He wanted to see His Majesty and complain to His Majesty. Based on his past achievements, he believed that as long as His Majesty remembered their old friendship, he would be able to rise again. The next morning, after Zhu Qizhen had a court meeting, he learned that Qian Sengbao was not at the emperor's side and had instead gone to the Imperial Horse Directorate. Kai Zhong directly went to visit and had one of his trusted eunuchs by the emperor's side report that he wanted to see the emperor. That day, Zhu Qizhen was in a very bad mood. He found that the number of people in the imperial court, which was held once every 3 days, had decreased by a lot. In order to maintain the operations of the imperial court, he had no choice but to quickly promote officials. However, when he thought about how many of the officials were still inexperienced and were still young, it was still unknown whether they could take charge of the various yamans and make the huge machine that was the Southern Ming Empire operate normally. Just as he was in a bad mood, he looked at the list of officials to be promoted sent by the Ministry of Appointments. When he saw that there were many names that he had not heard of before, his brows furrowed again and again. The emperor managed the officials managed the small officials managed the small officials, and the small officials managed the common people. This was the basic structure of a country. The emperor only needed to win over the hearts of the officials, and it was the same as controlling the world. However, when he had not heard of the names of the officials, could the emperor still manage them well? Would they be able to work with him and deal with the affairs of the state? At this moment, Zhu Qizhen's heart could not help but waver. Should he release the officials that the embroidered uniform guard had captured? This was just a thought, and he quickly rejected it. It was not for any other reason, but because these were all problematic officials. Once they were released and regained power, what would happen if these people no longer supported the Southern Ming Empire and instead supported the Yangxia Empire? Wouldn't that be the same as helping the enemy? Forget it, I hope that these new officials can quickly grow up. As he comforted himself like this, a eunuch came to report that eunuch Kai Zhong was outside the hall and was requesting an audience. Knowing why Kai Zhong was here, Zhu Qizhen originally did not want to see him. However, considering that he had been performing well and was considered loyal, he did not want to give him too much heart. Thinking about it, it was better not to disappoint the other party. He still had to comfort him and let him reflect on it. If there was a chance, he could use him again. It had to be said that Zhu Qizhen had indeed become the role model of the emperor when it came to the tolerance of eunuchs. Although some emperors also trusted eunuchs, there had never been anyone like Zhu Qizhen who, after suffering a big loss, taking a big tumble, and even dividing the great Ming dynasty into the north and the south, still did not know how to repent. Kai Zhong had grasped Zhu Qizhen's mentality and dared to take the initiative to request an audience. If it were any other eunuch, they would probably hide as far away as they could at this moment. After Kai Zhong received permission, he entered the hall. As soon as he entered the hall, he knelt on the ground with a plop. Following that, his face was covered in tears. First, he stated that after dividing the Great Ming Dynasty between the north and the south, he had traveled from the northern Ming Dynasty to the southern Ming Dynasty without hesitation. He had traveled thousands of miles just to seek refuge with the emperor. This was because he believed that the emperor was the sacred lord and definitely could not be compared to the despicable Zhu Qiyu. After coming to Yingtian Prefecture, he also worked conscientiously. When he saw the southern Ming Empire under Zhu Qian's rule, he was overjoyed and so on, and the southern Ming Empire's strength increased greatly. These were all to show off his achievements and flatter Zhu Qian in disguise. This was also a trick that Kai Zhong often used. This trick was indeed effective. Zhu Qian sat on the dragon throne with a satisfied expression on his face. This was a person who was conquered by his charisma. This was enough to prove that he was more suitable to be the emperor than Zhu Qiyu. Seeing that Zhu Qian's mood had improved, Kai Zhong began to complain tearfully. He said that Qian Sengbao and Mao Mu had joined forces to deal with him and that they could not bear to see others better than them. The reason why he used the power of the Imperial Horse Supervisor was to check and balance the power of the Imperial Horse Supervisor. It was true that the Imperial Horse Guards had arrested too many officials recently, and many of them did not have any problems. It was only because they joined the observation group and saw how powerful Xianxia was that they came back and complained a little. Besides, the observation group was decided by the emperor. How could there be a mistake? It would have been better if Kai Zhong did not mention this. When he mentioned this, Zhu Qian's expression changed. Speaking of which, there were 3 things that Zhu Qian regretted the most in his life. First, he should not have listened to Wang Zhen's words and personally led the army. This led to the defeat of the Tumu fortress and divided the Great Ming Empire into the northern and southern Ming empires. Second, he should not have let Yang Qindong leave. If he had kept Yang Xia by his side and used his ability to help him, all of Yang Xia's achievements would have been his. This point was somewhat taken for granted. If he had kept Yang Qindong, it would be hard to say if he would have been able to put him in an important position or if he would have listened to him. After all, if an official's ability was too strong, the emperor would always be afraid of him. Over time, once the official's achievements were too great, he would be killed. Third, the matter of establishing the observation group. Originally, he wanted to see how the other party was developing so that he could know himself and the enemy. If possible, he wanted to learn from the other party's advanced things. However, he did not expect that Yang Xia was too powerful. The members of the observation group actually developed a mentality of fear and brought this atmosphere back to the capital. As a result, the expressions of the officials below changed. Before the war had even begun, everyone was already in a state of panic. The theory of failure had become a mainstream. This was why he had no choice but to use the Imperial Horse Guards to suppress this matter. Chapter 1674. Zhu Qian wished that no one would mention such a regretful thing, but Kai Zhong took the initiative to mention it. Listening to him, he was the one who sent the observation group. Even if there was a problem, he should be responsible. This could be considered as provoking his anger. Without waiting for Kai Zhong to continue, Zhu Qian asked angrily, "What do you mean many officials have no problem? Do you mean they gave you money, so there's no problem?" Kai Zhong, who was talking non-stop, was suddenly interrupted and then asked such a question. For a moment, he was stunned and shocked. He didn't expect the emperor to know about this matter. More importantly, the emperor actually made this matter public. Normally, even if the emperor knew about some things, he would not say it publicly. He would only give a limited reminder. This was the scheming of an emperor. If he did not say anything clearly, he would let his subordinates think about it themselves. Often, this would have a greater effect of intimidating people. For a long time, Zhu Qian had done this. It indeed had a very good deterrent effect, so that the officials were a little afraid of the emperor. But what did it mean to say it publicly? Was he going to turn hostile? Perhaps it was because Kai Zhong had followed Zhu Qian for too long and had always received the emperor's favor that he had begun to forget his own identity. He didn't think about it. He was just a eunuch, and he thought that the emperor would fall out with him. It would only take a few words to punish him. What was so difficult about that? At first, he was stunned. He was a little stunned by Zhu Qijian's words. After he quickly reacted, his face suddenly changed and he broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that if he didn't make things clear today, not only would the emperor make a decision for him, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to make a comeback in the future. At that moment, Kai Zhong knelt on the ground with a plop and repeatedly admitted to being guilty. When he raised his head, he said, "Your Majesty, this official was protecting those officials. And Mao Mu also had a part in this matter. The money that those officials sent ended up in his hands, Your Majesty." He had no choice but to accuse Mao Mu. In Kai Zhong's opinion, there weren't many people by the emperor's side now. Mao Mu was very favored now. If he could pull this person in, presumably, even if it was for Mao Mu's face, this matter would be reduced to a small matter. As long as he could get through this, he would keep a low profile for a while. When the time was right, he would rise again. He thought that he found a scapegoat and Zhu Qijian would let him off. Eunuchs also had to do things. He couldn't arrest everyone. However, Kai Zhong didn't know that Mao Mu had already prepared for that. The money that Kai Zhong gave Mao Mu had already been sent to the emperor. To be honest, Mao Mu didn't lack money, or Yang Chendong didn't lack money at all. Not to mention the money that was given to Zhu Qijian. Once the Southern Ming Empire became a part of the Yang faction, this money would eventually return to their pockets. When Kai Zhong was still thinking that Zhu Qijian would let him go, a roar was heard. "You still have the nerve to talk about money? How much did you embezzle? Tell me." Zhu Qijian was really angry. Kai Zhong first blindly mentioned the observation group and exposed his scar. Then, he didn't repent and wanted to get Mao Mu off the horse. Did he really think that he had a good temper? Did he really think that he didn't dare to teach him a lesson? Yes, Zhu Qijian liked Kai Zhong very much. Previously, this person was able to come to Yingtian Prefecture from Baiming, which also proved his loyalty to him. However, to become a suitable subject, loyalty wasn't enough. He also needed to be capable. Not only was he incapable, but he was also very greedy. When he encountered a problem, he didn't want to admit his mistakes. He even wanted to get others off the horse to achieve his goal of making him hesitate. Such a person couldn't be easily forgiven. This. Zhu Qijian's reaction was completely out of Kai Zhong's expectations. He didn't expect that he would directly ask how much money he had received. Based on his experience of serving Zhu Qijian all these years, since he asked this question, he must have an answer. When he thought of the punishment of the great Ming dynasty for corrupt officials, Kai Zhong was afraid. He kowtowed to the ground and said, "Your Majesty, this subject is guilty, this subject is guilty." But Mao Mu really accepted this subject's money. At this time, Kai Zhong still wanted to get Mao Mu off the horse to share his mistake. If he really admitted his mistake, perhaps Zhu Qijian would really spare him for the sake of his loyalty. At most, he wouldn't put him in an important position in the future. Speaking of which, Zhu Qijian's use of eunuchs was definitely the highest in history. However, at this time, Kai Zhong still wanted to find a scapegoat. How was this admitting his mistake? It was clearly sophistry. Zhu Qijian was completely disappointed now. He shook his head, and his voice suddenly became much calmer. "Minister Mao Mu has already presented the money you gave him to me. You still dare to accuse a loyal subject. You really disappoint me." "Ah!" Kai Zhong once again let out a unique duck-like shriek. Then, he fell to his knees on the ground as if there were no bones in his body to support him. He didn't expect Mao Mu to do this. Didn't that mean he had already sold him? He even used this as an excuse to escape punishment. He really didn't know how the word death was written. A eunuch was a eunuch. No matter how strong he was, a word from the emperor would just turn him into ashes. Kai Zhong was taken away by the burly general outside the hall. When he left, he didn't beg for mercy because he knew how miserable his fate would be. At this moment, saying anything would be futile. When Mao Mu heard of this matter, it was already 2 hours later. His expression didn't change, but he was a little excited. Chao Jixiang and Kai Zhong were finished like this. Should it be Qian Seng's turn to protect them next? Thinking of this, Mao Mu felt that he should do something. Compared to Mao Mu's calmness, Qian Seng Bao was laughing to his heart's content. After all these years, he finally felt like he was in control of the entire group of eunuchs. There were no competitors, and Mao Mu listened to him. In the future, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted? Once he completely integrated this power, he would hear in front of the emperor that was beneficial to him. In this way, no one would shake his foundation. He would become the second Wang Zhen. No. When Wang Zhen was here, there were other eunuchs who shared power. If he did it well, he could be more impressive than Wang Zhen. Qian Seng Bao, who was in a good mood, quickly received good news. Many officials came to find him, especially some officials from other provinces. After the embroidered uniform guard's target moved from the capital to other provinces, officials near the capital began to be arrested. These people, in order to protect themselves, found Qian Seng Bao through the guidance of other officials. After all, Mao Mu didn't accept money. When he met the officials, he always had a cold face, giving people a feeling that he was unapproachable. Kai Zhong was completely taken down, so they had no other choice but to find Qian Seng Bao. More and more officials came to see him, and the amount of money they gave him also increased. In a short 3 days, he received 3 million taels of silver. This showed how rich the officials were. It also showed that the money in their hands was far more than what they got from their salaries. Qian Seng Bao also had a good appetite. He would give a reply according to the amount of money sent to him. If they sent a small amount, he would naturally be perfunctory. If they sent a large amount, he would clearly say that he would protect them. If they sent a large amount, he would take time to meet them directly and comfort them. In a short time, Qian Seng Bao became the second parent of many officials. Praises came one after another. Following these officials' words, eunuch Qian was their life-saving straw. He was their biggest backer. This kind of action naturally attracted the resistance of some self-proclaimed righteous officials. They were either honest officials, or they had been officials for too short a time and couldn't gather much money. However, they were jealous, so they all sent memorials to Sing Qian to protect them. When these memorials were sent to Zhu Qizhen, they were all ignored. The emperor didn't care. Did the people who did things have to be reported? Just like eunuch Mao Mu, weren't there just as many people who reported him? Not to mention, Zhu Qizhen was very conceited. He thought that he understood Qian Seng Bao and didn't have the guts to steal so much money. If it was 100 or 2,000 taels of silver, he might still dare to do it. However, it was a few million taels of silver. He didn't have the guts. This was Zhu Qizhen's biggest shortcoming. He always liked to be self-righteous. He always thought that he understood everything. He always thought that he was very good at judging people. Wang Zhen was like this before, Qian Seng Bao was like this now, and Mao Mu would also be like this in the future. It was no wonder he lost everything in the end. Mao Mu quietly watched Qian Seng Bao's performance from the side. He also did his best to complete the orders given to him by the other party. He didn't touch any of the names sent by the other party, even though he didn't see a single copper coin of the money sent by these officials. The only thing he did was to memorize the names of these officials and send people to investigate how much money those officials sent to Qian Seng Bao. He also wanted to know in his heart how much money those officials sent to Qian Seng Bao. His thoughts and desires were far greater than Qian Seng Bao's. Qian Seng Bao didn't feel any discomfort with Mao Mu's cooperation. On the contrary, he thought that everything should be done. Just think about it. Even Kai Zhong, such a favored eunuch, was he not also defeated by him? Qian Seng Bao arrogantly thought that Kai Zhong's fall was because of him. Besides, wasn't Mao Mu able to become the head of the embroidered uniform guard today with his help? Chapter 1675. Since he could help the other party, he could also pull the other party down. Listening to his orders now was a sign of intelligence. With this kind of arrogance, Qian Sengbao walked further and further down the wrong path. Later, when he sent the name list, he was too lazy to see Mao Mu. Instead, he sent the eunuch beside him to do it. At the same time, he was also preparing to find someone to replace Kai Zhong's position. One day, when the opportunity was right, he was even preparing to find someone to replace Mao Mu's position. No matter how obedient Mao Mu was, it was not as good as someone he personally trained. He felt more at ease doing things. Soon, a eunuch named Song De and Zhang Chen entered Qian Sengbao's sight. These two people were good at talking. Every day, they flattered Qian Sengbao like dogs, saying things that made people feel comfortable. In addition to Qian Sengbao's nephew, Qian Liang, the three of them became Qian Sengbao's right-hand men. Under Qian Sengbao's arrangement, the two eunuchs entered the Imperial Horse Directorate and prepared to use their methods to compete for the position of chief eunuch. Qian Liang found his uncle. He wanted to be the commander of the embroidered uniform guard. Qian Liang was a real man, unlike eunuchs. Naturally, there were not many people who could adapt to his position. In comparison, the rank of commander of the embroidered uniform guard was suitable and had great power. The position was impressive enough. Naturally, it was his first choice. This was not the first time Qian Liang had asked for it. In the past, Qian Sengbao had refused, saying that he needed to train. In fact, he wanted to earn money. According to his discussion with Mao Mu, the position of commander was worth 500,000 taels of silver. This did not include the monthly filial piety. But now, with so many officials giving him gifts, he didn't lack this small amount of money. He immediately agreed to his nephew's request. First, when he was serving Zhu Qizhen, he revealed how capable his nephew was. With the imperial favor and trust, Qian Liang became the commander of the embroidered uniform guard as he wished, a third-rank official. Qian Liang happily took up the position. After he arrived at the embroidered uniform guard, he boasted of being the boss and began to give orders. This immediately attracted the dissatisfaction of Shen Nantang and Wu Ben, who had become the commander of the embroidered uniform guard. This position should have been theirs, but now it was given to an outsider. The grievance they felt was unspeakable. But it didn't mean that they couldn't do anything. For example, it was still possible for them to unite with their brothers and not cooperate with Qian Liang's work. No wonder they were brought up by Mao Mu. Both Shen Nantang and Wu Ben were generous people. They usually took care of their brothers in every possible way. If any brother's family was in trouble, they would help if they could and take money if they could. After all, as long as they followed Mao Mu, they would never be short of money. They could also intercept a lot of gray income and only needed to report it to Mao Mu. Generous and loyal, the brothers under him would naturally submit to him. When Qian Liang found that no one was listening to him after working for a whole day and everyone was patronizing him, he got angry. No matter what, he was still Qian Sengbao's nephew. He was taught by Qian Sengbao, so he still had some ability. At that moment, he thought of the method his uncle taught him. He wanted to rope in a group of people by himself to achieve the goal of fighting for the right to speak. However, the greedy Qian Liang was unwilling to spend money. When facing some of the embroidered uniform guard brothers who were on the sidelines and didn't have much ability, even if he went out to eat with them, they still had to pay. Gradually, after everyone knew Qian Liang's nature, in just a few days, everyone stopped paying attention to this commander. When you didn't get anything in return, who did you think you were, a fool? Qian Liang found that the brothers around him were getting fewer and fewer. When he was about to become a commander without an army, he finally felt powerless. He had no choice but to ask his uncle, Qian Sengbao, for help. Soon, Mao Mu received a message from a little eunuch sent by Qian Sengbao, asking to see him. In this period of time, Mao Mu had also cultivated a lot of trusted eunuchs. Among them, the most outstanding one was the eunuch called Zhu Tao. Under Mao Mu's intention, he was promoted to the position of deputy chief eunuch in the empress palace. Usually, when he wasn't here, it was Zhu Tao who took care of all kinds of things. Godfather, eunuch Qian didn't come with good intentions. Zhu Tao's face was full of worry. When the little eunuch came to deliver the message, he happened to be present. Because of Mao Mu's trust, he also knew that Qian Liang had hit a wall in the embroidered uniform guard. Regarding this, Zhu Tao had always been worried. He meant to worship Qian Liang like a bodhisattva. No matter what, he was still eunuch Qian Sengbao's nephew. This kind of superficial work still had to be done. If it was in the past, Mao Mu could only do this. However, now that Kai Zhong had fallen from power, Chao Jixiang's power had been uprooted, and only Qian Sengbao was left. He really wasn't afraid of anything. At worst, everyone would fight. Speaking of which, he had a lot of evidence in his hands. Once he took it out, he was afraid that Qian Sengbao wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. That's right, little Taozi. You're right. This time, I'm afraid eunuch Qian will come to make things difficult for this eunuch. Mao Mu nodded. He agreed with this point of view, but he wasn't afraid. This was because taking down Qian Sengbao was originally one of his goals. Only in this way could he truly control the eunuch group. Only then could he reach the left and right harem and even part of the imperial court's power when Yang Xia launched an attack. In order to achieve this goal, Qian Sengbao must fall. With a goal, he had to do it. Mao Mu had been preparing for this. But at the same time, he was also very clear that after all, he had followed Zhu Qizhen for so many years and was called a companion. It wasn't so easy to take down Qian Sengbao. If he didn't do it well, he would be in trouble if he couldn't take down the other party. Therefore, he needed a bigger opportunity. Just last night, the group that contacted him had already sent the opportunity to him. The next problem was how to implement it. Now that Qian Sengbao asked him to go over, it was the right time to throw out the bait. He got up and walked calmly in the direction of Qingjing Hall. Along the way, Mao Mu had already thought about how to face Qian Sengbao and how to answer when questioned. As expected, in the room where Qian Sengbao was resting, Qian Liang was standing beside him. When Mao Mu walked in, Qian Liang immediately had an arrogant look and didn't even look him in the eye. Mao Mu was like an old monk in meditation. He didn't have any reaction to all this. But when he came in front of Qian Sengbao, he bowed respectfully and looked like he was waiting for the emperor's orders. After all, Mao Mu was now the director of the genie guards and was an acquaintance of the emperor and empress. Qian Sengbao couldn't be too arrogant. So he first squeezed out a smile and then said with a smile, "Eunuch Mao, you're here. Have a seat." "I don't dare. In front of eunuch Qian, how can I have a place?" Mao Mu replied very low-key. Haha. Qian Sengbao was very impressed with Mao Mu's attitude. Mao Mu was the kind of person who was very obedient. Basically, he would do whatever Qian Sengbao asked him to do. Not only that, but he was also very respectful every time they met. If it wasn't for the matter of his nephew, Qian Liang, he wouldn't be able to find any fault with him. It was precisely because Mao Mu had always been too low-key that Qian Sengbao was very unhappy when a problem arose. In his opinion, Mao Mu was clearly looking down on Qian Liang. That was equivalent to looking down on him. He really needed to give Mao Mu a beating. In Qian Sengbao's eyes, Mao Mu could be where he was today because of his recommendation. Otherwise, Mao Mu would only be a chief eunuch in the empress palace who didn't have much power. He was used to being complimented and couldn't stand the slightest bit of grievance. Qian Sengbao was such a person. So when Mao Mu stood firm, he expressed his displeasure. "Eunuch Mao, this duke wants to ask, who exactly does the embroidered uniform guard listen to now? Is it still the embroidered uniform guard under the emperor's command? Why is it that the embroidered uniform guard doesn't listen to the words of the emperor's personal commander? As the director of their factory, shouldn't you say something?" He was denouncing Mao Mu. Although he had already expected all of this, Mao Mu still pretended to be in fear and trepidation. His face was full of shock. How is this possible? Such a thing can't happen, right? It won't. Qian Liang, come and talk to eunuch Mao. Qian Sengbao looked like he didn't want to argue with Mao Mu. At this time, he had already begun to consider whether he should arrange for someone else to manage the genie guards and remove Mao Mu. When it was Qian Liang's turn to speak, he talked endlessly about what happened after he went to the genie guards. He added oil and vinegar. Qian Liang didn't have any other skills, but his eloquence was quite good. After he said this, it really seemed like he had suffered a great grievance. Qian Sengbao, who was listening at the side, was very angry. Even Mao Mu had an indignant look on his face as he roared, these people are too outrageous. They should all be captured and killed." Qian Sengbao and Qian Liang were dumbfounded by Mao Mu's roar. They didn't expect Mao Mu to have such a reaction. Shouldn't he be looking for reasons and making excuses? Why did he suddenly seem to be more angry than them? As for what he said, killing all the genie guards, this was something Qian Sengbao and Qian Liang didn't want to do. If they really killed them, who would do the work? Oh, the genie guards were doing well before. Now that Qian Liang was the commander, their work suddenly stopped. What would the emperor think? Even if he used his toes to think, he would know what was going on. We must kill them all. Since they don't respect the commander like this, killing them is not wrong. Eunuch Qian, I ask for an imperial edict to punish all the current genie guards. If it doesn't work, we'll kill more than half of them. This way, we'll see who dares to not listen to the commander's orders. Mao Mu didn't seem to be joking. Since he was going to ask for an imperial edict, he was serious. Chapter 1676. Of course, Qian Sengbao wouldn't agree. Although he was very angry that the embroidered uniform guards didn't obey his nephew's orders. But if he had to kill them all because of this, he would not do such a thing. Therefore, the person who should be condemning him became the one who comforted him. Ayaya, eunuch Mao, calm down, calm down. You can't do things like this. How can you fight and kill for no reason? Yes. I was too agitated. It's just that I really don't know about this matter. I've been taking care of the Empress for a while and haven't been to the brocade guard's yamen. If you don't believe me, Commander Qian, think about it carefully. Have you seen me in the past few days? Mao Mu knew that he had the upper hand, so he stopped and asked Qian Liang. Qian Liang thought about it carefully and found that it was true. He immediately replied, that's right. I haven't seen eunuch Qian in the embroidered uniform guard these few days. That's right. It's all a misunderstanding. However, it doesn't matter. I'll go to the embroidered uniform guard and gather those brats. I'll give them a good lecture and have Commander Qian give them a good lecture. What do you think, eunuch Qian? Mao Mu seemed to be speaking in a submissive tone. What could Qian Sengbao say when he had such a proper attitude? He could only nod and say, since it's a misunderstanding, I've wronged eunuch Mao. Then we'll do as you say. Thank you for your understanding, eunuch Qian. Mao Mu's body straightened at this moment. The atmosphere eased up a lot and the three people all had smiles on their faces. Since the atmosphere eased, there was no need to be so serious. Mao Mu said, eunuch Qian, Commander Qian, it's not difficult to deal with these embroidered uniform guards. You can do it from two aspects. The first is to give them money. With benefits, everyone will be willing to follow you. As he spoke, Mao Mu was still observing Qian Sengbao and Qian Liang's reactions. Just as he thought, both of them had a serious look on their faces after listening to him. Obviously, for misers like them, it was more appropriate for others to give them money. Asking them to take out their money and hand it over to their subordinates was even more unbearable than killing them. Mao Mu then continued, if we don't give them money, then we can only take the second path, which is to display enough ability to intimidate them. Coincidentally, there is a matter that His Majesty has instructed me to discuss the issue of grain with Xianxia. If this matter is done well, this merit will be enough to intimidate others, and we won't have to worry about the brocade guards not being obedient. Listening to Mao Mu's words, Xian Liang originally wanted to say that his ability was mediocre. It was too difficult to prove to others with his ability. But before he could say anything, he heard about the problem of food. He couldn't help but open his ears wide. At this moment, Qian Sengbao's expression turned serious. His intuition told him that this matter of food could be done. After all, it was part of the procurement process. As long as one was a eunuch in the palace or an official in the imperial court, who wouldn't know that when it came to procurement, there were always benefits to be gained. Eunuch Mao, what exactly is going on? Tell me about it. Qian Sengbao took this to heart. When he asked about Mao Mu, his attitude became much more amiable. Mao Mu, who had been waiting for this sentence, explained the task that His Majesty had instructed him to do in detail. It turned out that ever since Yang Xia was assassinated in the capital and the imperial edict in Chao Jixiang's hands, although Yang Xia didn't declare war on the Southern Ming Empire, he had been preparing for it. It was said that there were many official ships that went from Qiqian City to Laizhou Prefecture every day, transporting all kinds of supplies before the war. Of course, the Southern Ming Empire wasn't idle either. The Ministry of War began to deploy troops and the Ministry of Revenue began to prepare money and food. Here came the problem. In the past few years, because Yang Xia had poured large amounts of food into the Southern Ming Empire, and the price was very reasonable, it heavily suppressed the local food industry. As a result, the more land the farmers planted, the more losses they suffered. Gradually, large amounts of land began to become barren, and the Southern Ming Empire no longer had the ability to produce their own food. Now that they were about to go to war with Yang Xia naturally didn't want to sell food to the Southern Ming Empire. Although in the past 2 years, the officials of the Southern Ming Empire had seen through the problem and increased the amount of food they bought, and they had accumulated some food. However, if they only sent out and didn't receive any food, they wouldn't be able to last for long. For the Southern Ming Empire that was about to go to war, this was an extremely dangerous matter. The emperor saw the problem and handed the matter to the embroidered uniform guards, telling them to discuss with the officials of Yang Xia about the matter of purchasing food. After all, the two sides hadn't declared war yet, right? Moreover, in the previous negotiations, it was agreed that the Southern Ming Empire could continue to buy food, but the price would be raised by 30%. A 30% price increase was still acceptable to the Southern Ming Empire. What they were afraid of was that the Yang Xia wouldn't sell food. That would be the worst-case scenario. Regarding this matter, we also sent people to discuss with the officials of Yang Xia. The other party also revealed a certain amount of information. It's not that they don't want to sell food. After all, the Yang Xia boasted that they wanted to bring the Han people to the peak of the world. The Southern Ming Empire is full of Han people, and they can't just watch the people starve to death. However, they still want to raise the price. This is something that the emperor can't accept. Our embroidered uniform guards are responsible for buying food at a 30% price increase to prepare for war. Mao Mu said a lot in one breath. After he finished speaking, he closed his mouth and looked at Qian Sengbao and his nephew's performance. The matter was already very clear, and Qian Sengbao was also thinking in his heart. If this was the case, this was indeed a good job. Once he could buy a lot of food, the emperor would definitely be happy. Then, he would be able to obtain merit. However, the problem was that it wasn't easy to talk about the price of food. Thus, he asked the crucial question, Eunuch Mao, does the emperor mean that there's a possibility of the price increasing? The emperor naturally hopes that it will be as low as possible. However, the food is now in the hands of others. Of course, it's not up to us to decide. If it must increase, then we can only accept it. Mao Mu spread out his hands, and there was a hint of helplessness on his face. This meant that there was room for fluctuation. This way, not only could this task be completed, there might even be a lot of profit in the process. Qian Sengbao's eyes lit up. He had already decided to accept this task for his nephew. When he looked at Mao Mu, he didn't blame him at all. Not only that, his eyes were filled with admiration. It seemed that he had really wronged him before. If Mao Mu really didn't want Xian Liang to be the commander, then why would he mention such an important task? When he thought about how he had wronged him, a trace of guilt flashed across Qian Sengbao's face. He then said, "Eunuch Mao, it was indeed a misunderstanding. I have wronged you. How about this? Qian Liang will accept this task. When you return, please hand over the relevant matters. What do you think? This. Everything will be done according to Eunuch Qian's wishes." Mao Mu pretended to hesitate for a moment, then agreed. As for whether the other party would gain merit because of this, sorry, this was originally a trap. Qian Liang was willing to fall into it, so he couldn't blame others. Mao Mu was politely sent away. Qian Sengbao and his nephew, Qian Liang, went into a secret meeting. Because of the big trouble, Qian Sengbao even called the eunuch, Songda, to help Qian Liang. After that, he repeatedly reminded Songda that the matter must be done well so that he could show his face in front of the emperor. After Qian Liang received a good task, he was naturally very excited. Soon, he brought Songda out of the palace and went straight to Yang Xie's office in the capital. In the office, a young official, Wang Tongxing, who was only 24 years old, was already waiting for Qian Liang to visit. Wang Tongxing, a student of the 6th batch of Yang Xia Academy in Crimson City. When he graduated, he was ranked first in all aspects and caught the eye of Yang Chendong. First, he was sent to the city lord's mansion and started from a small position. His work ability was once recognized by city lord Yu Qian. After that, he was trained by Yang Chendong. This time, he was sent to Southern Ming to cooperate with Mao Mu to seize power. As a student of the Yang Family Academy, there was no need to talk about their ability. More importantly, they were loyal to their leader, Yang Chendong. In the eyes of these students, without Yang Chendong, they wouldn't have everything they had now. In addition, in ancient times, students were very respectful to their teachers. If anyone dared to violate them, they would not be tolerated by this society. This kind of student was naturally worthy of trust. Wang Tongxing was a person who was trusted. Before he came, Yang Chendong specially called him over to give him some instructions. He was very clear about the task this time. Therefore, when he heard that someone in the office reported that the commander of the Southern Ming Brocade Guards, Qian Liang, had come to visit, a smile flashed across his face. The fish had taken the bait. Not only Qian Liang, but many well-informed people from the Southern Ming Empire also knew of Yang Xi's strength. Unknowingly, they had developed the thought of being inferior to him. Therefore, as soon as he entered the office, Qian Liang put away his arrogance and became cautious. He even smiled at everyone he met. For someone like Qian Liang, if he was born during the anti-Japanese war, he would be a complete traitor. After being led to a room, Qian Liang saw Wang Tongxing. However, it was different from what he imagined. Wang Tongxing immediately asked greedily, "Commander Qian, right? Such an important position must be very rich. This is the first time we meet. Do you have any greeting gift?" Qian Liang had never experienced such a thing. The moment they met, they immediately asked for money. Even the most savage and unscrupulous group of eunuchs in his eyes didn't seem to do things so blatantly. For a moment, he was stunned. Qian Liang didn't respond. Wang Tongxing was very angry. He waved his hand and said, "Since you didn't prepare a greeting gift, you can go back. This official is tired today. We can talk about the food another day." Chapter 1677. Ah. I don't want it. Seeing that Wang Tongxing was angry, Qian Liang immediately reacted. He stretched out his hand and said to Songda, "Quick, do you have anything good on you? Take it out quickly." Songda's face was bitter, but he did not dare to offend Qian Liang. He could only take out a small pendant from his waist. When he was serving Zhu Qizhen, the emperor was in a good mood and gave it to him. He treated it as a family heirloom. When the small pendant was taken out, it was snatched away by Qian Liang. He then presented it to Wang Tongxing with a flattering expression. "Sir, do you like it? This is a pendant given to eunuchs by the emperor. It's all good stuff. And, not bad, not bad. Wang Tongxing took the pendant and looked at it. It was indeed a good piece of jade. Wang Tongxing nodded with satisfaction. He then smiled and introduced himself to Qianliang. He said that he was the person in charge of negotiating the grain price with the Southern Ming Empire. Since the person in charge was in front of him, Qianliang felt relieved. Both sides sat together and began to discuss. Things weren't as complicated as Qianliang thought. The Yang faction didn't have any intention of not selling grain to the Southern Ming Empire. According to Wang Tongxing's introduction, the Yang faction was now vigorously reclaiming wastelands and developing agriculture. Now, they had so much grain that they couldn't finish it. Although they had built many granaries, they still couldn't store the grain. If this continued for a long time, there was a possibility that the grain would rot. This was also why the two sides were discussing the issue of grain sales when they were about to go to war. Hearing this, Qianliang's eyes lit up. He felt that he had met a wooden club. This kind of confidential matter should not be easily announced. Now that the other party had told him everything, wasn't that the same as revealing the bottom line in advance? Wang Tongxing did not seem to have this awareness. He continued, "Of course, we can sell the grain to you. The key is the problem of price. Sai, to be honest, as a Xianxia official, it is hard. You don't know. Although we seem to be treated well, there are too many people relying on me. I pity my wife and 6 concubines. How am I going to feed them?" As they chatted, Wang Tongxing began to talk about his own difficulties. Qianliang was stunned when he heard this. He didn't understand. How many concubines you have and how many people you need to feed is none of my business. Is there any meaning in telling me these things? On the other hand, Songda, who came along with Qianliang, was a smart person. He saw something and immediately pulled Qianliang, who was still in a daze, and then whispered something. Wang Tongxing saw these small actions, but he didn't stop them. Instead, he picked up his teacup and drank his tea as if he didn't see them. After Songda bit Qianliang's ear for a while, he quickly revealed a look of realization. He nodded, and when he looked at Wang Tongxing, he asked in a probing tone, "Lord Wang, I understand what you mean. You can rest assured that once this matter is settled, you will be rewarded handsomely. But how much do you think is suitable for this price?" "Ha ha ha, Lord Qian is a smart man. Since that's the case, the price is easy to negotiate. You can set any price, but it can't be lower than the original price. It can't be more than 30% of the original price. Of course, the higher the price, the more manipulative it will be, and the more benefits we will receive." When he heard that it was only 30% of the original price, Qianliang was naturally overjoyed. He opened his mouth and wanted to agree, but when he heard that the higher the price, the more benefits he would receive, he immediately shut his mouth and his mind began to wander. At the end of the day, there was nothing more practical than money. Money was the only thing that could be relied on and could save a life at a critical moment. As long as he had a large amount of money, so what if he didn't want to be a commander? He could be a rich man and enjoy life, couldn't he? The temptation of the silver made Qianliang's eyes light up, but he still carefully asked, "Lord Wang, if that's the case, what if we double the original price of the unit price? But how much can we gain from this?" It wasn't a 30% increase, but a 100% increase. This way, there would be a lot of manipulation in the middle. Of course, the Southern Ming Empire would have to pay a great price for this. But who cares? The Southern Ming Empire belonged to the imperial court, the Zhu clan, and Zhu Qizhen. It didn't belong to the 3 of them, so why would they care so much? Double the original price, this price is not bad. Wang Tongxing was very satisfied when he heard this. After thinking for a while, he said, "Then this official will report to Xianxia that the price has been increased by 50%. This way, this official will be able to account for it. This way, there will be 50% of the profits, enough for us to split, hee hee." "Ha ha ha, very good, very good." Xian Liang laughed heartily when he heard that there would be at least 25% of the profits. Neither side had expected the matter to progress so smoothly. However, they were both greedy people. What they cared about was getting the money in the bag. In order to get the silver as soon as possible without any accidents, Xian Liang stood and said, "In that case, I will report this matter to the court. I think there will be news soon." "Good, then I'll have to trouble Lord Xian. This official will wait here for your good news." Wang Tongxing also stood up with a satisfied smile on his face. When he saw that Xian Liang and Song Do were about to leave, he didn't forget to add, "Next time, don't forget to bring a greeting gift." This caused Xian Liang and Song Do to stagger and almost fall to the ground. At almost the same time, a word appeared in their minds: corrupt official. Because of this, the two of them trusted Wang Tongxing even more. Because only such a corrupt official would do something that harmed the Yangxia, such as selling Yangxia's grain to the Southern Ming Empire at a low price. This gave them the opportunity to earn a large sum of money from the difference in price. Xian Liang and Song De left. They didn't know that when they walked out of Yang Xia's office, the greedy Wang Tongxing behind them had already returned to his original appearance. His expression was calm and his eyes were spirited. He didn't look like a greedy official at all. The two of them quickly returned to the imperial palace and saw Qian Xingbao and eunuch Zhang Chen who was serving him. Seeing that there were no outsiders, the two of them gave a detailed report of their meeting. They reported that Wang Tongxing had asked for a greeting gift the moment they met and reminded them to bring a greeting gift the next time they met. When Qian Xingbao heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. "This Bugnam of Gojoseon, he's good at fighting and is also an excellent commander. However, when it comes to managing officials, he really isn't that good. However, this is also good. Otherwise, how can we earn money from this?" Seeing that Qian Xingbao seemed to have agreed, Xian Liang went forward and said, "Uncle, this matter can be done. However, isn't doubling the original price a bit too much?" "Not much, not much." Qian Xingbao shook his head and said, "You don't understand the emperor's heart. What the emperor wants is to be able to buy grain and have enough war reserves. Besides, buying grain isn't a long-term plan. Didn't you see that the imperial court has already started preparing for spring? In the future, our land will also be able to grow grain and we won't need to buy from Yangxia. Therefore, we have to seize the opportunity in front of us to make a fortune. Otherwise, we don't know when we will have such an opportunity." Qian Xingbao was Zhu Qizhen's chief eunuch, so he naturally knew more. He also understood Zhu Qizhen's thoughts better than others. When Qian Xingbao said this, Qian Liang's eyes lit up as he said, "Uncle, since this is the case, then nephew should write a report?" "Yes, immediately write a report. Remember, you have to write down how you tried to persuade Yangxia's officials. This is a good opportunity for you to make a name for yourself," Qian Xingbao instructed. Qian Liang nodded continuously, "Uncle, don't worry. Nephew knows what to do." "Oh right, of the 25% profit, 15% is to be filial to uncle. All these years, uncle has taken care of nephew so much. Nephew is very grateful." Seeing Qian Liang being so tactful, Qian Xingbao laughed in satisfaction. Then he patted Qian Liang's shoulder and said, "Well said, well said. Actually, uncle is old and won't live for long. In the future, uncle's money will be left to you." "HM? Ha ha ha. Yes, yes." This scene of uncle and nephew being harmonious was seen by Song De and Zhang Chen. The two of them were envious. Why didn't they have such a good uncle? Qian Liang was a man of action. He quickly finished writing the report and even found a literate eunuch to polish it. Then, Qian Xingbao personally delivered it to Zhu Qizhen. Hearing that the matter of grain was settled, Zhu Qizhen was very happy. When he received the report, he sighed and said, "My wife is my beloved official. My wife's nephew is also not bad. Truly a family of two." Receiving such praise, Qian Xingbao was very excited. However, his eyebrows didn't move at all. Instead, he said seriously, everything this subject has is given to me by the emperor. It is my duty to work for the emperor. I don't dare to be greedy. Good, good. Seeing Qian Sengbao's neither arrogant nor impatient appearance, Zhu Qizhen was even happier. He opened the report and read it. Then, his expression became more serious. He said with displeasure, "Why is the price so expensive? Our financial pressure is too great." Knowing that Zhu Qizhen would say this, Qian Sengbao quickly explained, "Your Majesty, there is nothing we can do about it. After all, we are going to war with the Yangxia. As two people who are going to be enemies, it is already very difficult for them to sell grain to us. This is also because Qian Liang used the reason that the Han people of the southern Ming dynasty don't have any grain to eat. If we use this as military grain, I'm afraid that the other side won't sell it to us even if we give them mountains of gold and silver." Chapter 1678. That makes sense. Since that's the case, let's talk about it. But remember, you must buy more. No one knows how long this war will last. We must make more preparations. Zhu Qizhen felt that Qian Senbao's words were reasonable and nodded in agreement. Since Zhu Qizhen agreed, Qian Senbao's heart could be at ease. After leaving Qingjing Hall, he called Qian Liang and Song De and told them to immediately go to Yang Xie's office to settle the matter, so as to avoid any problems or the other party increasing the price. Then he took out a jade rui that the emperor had bestowed to him and said, "This is a meeting gift for Sir Wang. You must handle this matter well. Uncle, please rest assured." "Please rest assured, Qian Gonggang." Qian Liang and Song De agreed with a smile. After receiving the jade rui, they quickly made preparations and left the palace. In Yang Xie's office, Qian Liang once again met Wang Tongsheng. When he took out the jade rui, the other party was clearly very satisfied. The following conversation went even more smoothly. In the end, they settled on an agreement to buy 10 million sure of grain first. The salary of the great Ming dynasty's officials was very low. The 7th-ranked county magistrate of the Ming dynasty only had an annual income of 90 sure, which was less than 200 taels of silver. They also had to feed a large number of people. In order to dominate the entire southern Ming dynasty's market, Yang Xie sold grain at a very low price. 1 sure, about 120 caddies, was originally sold for 2 taels of silver by Yang Xie. Now, it was 4 taels of silver. 10 million sure was 40 million taels of silver. The actual payment to Yang Xie was only 30 million taels of silver. The uncle and nephew of the Qian family earned 5 million taels of silver. After the agreement was settled, Yang Xie's office began to transport the grain. Qian Liang said that the next time they met, he would bring money and make preparations to receive the grain. Both sides happily parted, but Wang Tongxing still didn't forget to say that the next time they came, they had to bring a meeting gift. This made Qian Liang extremely angry. After this transaction, the other party could earn 5 million taels of silver. Wasn't that enough? They even wanted a meeting gift. They were even more greedy than him. After watching Qian Liang and Song De leave in a hurry, Wang Tongxing said to one of his followers with a smile on his face, "Go and spread the news. The matter is done. We can start now." "Yes, sir." The follower replied and quickly left. Not long after, Mao Mu received news from the liaison team that they could take action. He rubbed his hands together and said to eunuch Zhu Hai, "Little Hai, let's act according to plan." "Yes, eunuch Mao." Zhu Hai's heart thumped wildly. As Mao Mu's trusted eunuch, he already knew that his father-in-law wanted to deal with Qian Sengbao. Previously, his heart had been hanging in the air because he knew what would happen if he failed in such a battle. However, in order to obtain more power, they had no choice but to fight. Fortunately, his master's plan was meticulous. Now that he saw that most of the matter had been accomplished, he could finally rest assured and get to work. Half a day after Zhu Hai left, a rumor began to circulate in Jingdo. If an official wanted to protect himself, it was useless to find a monk to protect him. Mao Mu of the Brocade Guard was the one who had the final say. As soon as the news came out, many officials became nervous. They had just sent a large sum of silver to Monk Qian not long ago. Now that he said it was useless, they had to get the money back and transfer it to Mao Mu. But after all, it was just a rumor and had not been confirmed. Everyone wanted to continue observing and not be confused by this news without a source. What happened next did not need them to linger around. The Brocade Guards suddenly came to the manor of the Ministry of Justice's censor, He Xingxiao, and took him away. He Xingxiao's sudden arrest made everyone's hair stand on end. A few days ago, when everyone was drinking together, He Xingxiao, who had drunk a little too much, said that he had sent 50,000 taels of silver to Monk Qian. However, he had now been taken away by the Brocade Guard. Did this not prove that the rumor was true? No one wanted to be the next person to be taken away. After a discussion, the officials chose a few representatives to enter the palace to see Monk Qian. Since your words no longer have any effect on the Brocade Guard, you should return the silver we sent and we will send it to eunuch Mao Mu. In short, we don't care how you fight, but don't encroach on our power. One official was not scary. What was scary was dozens of officials gathered together. Even Zhu Qizhen would have a headache dealing with this force. Zhu Qizhen did not know about this at this time. He was listening to Mao Mu's secret report. Since it was a secret report, of course, he would not let more people be present. Especially when he heard that this secret report was related to his partner, Monk Qian, all the eunuchs in the Qingjing Hall were driven out. Only 2 eunuchs, Mao Mu and Zhang Chen, were left. Zhang Chen, the eunuch who was regarded as Monk Qian's confidant, had another identity. He was Mao Mu's spy. There was nothing in the world that money could not solve. If it could not be solved, then money would be added. Zhang Chen had been bought over by Mao Mu long ago. That was when Zhang Chen was just a little eunuch. He entered the palace because his family was poor. Once, he was accidentally discovered by Mao Mu. That day, he happened to go out to buy silk for the empress. He saw Zhang Chen's father saying something at the palace gate. At that time, Zhang Chen's face was full of tears. With the idea of making more good karma, Mao Mu walked forward and learned that Zhang Chen's mother was seriously ill and urgently needed money. Zhang Chen's father really had no choice. Only then did he think of his son in the palace who was no longer a healthy person. But at that time, Zhang Chen was just the lowest level eunuch. He had no power, no influence, and no extra money. It was not easy to get some monthly allowance, but it was deducted by the eunuchs. There was not much left. Mao Mu took out 100 taels of silver at one time. Zhang Chen was so grateful that he wanted to kneel down on the spot. From then on, Zhang Chen became Mao Mu's man. However, because his level was too low, and Mao Mu was very low-key at that time, no one noticed this matter. From then on, Mao Mu kept giving Zhang Chen money. Zhang Chen was also a smart and capable person. Step by step, he became Qian Sengbao's right-hand man and became his right-hand man. Mao Mu brought Zhang Chen to Zhu Qizhen to report to him about the food. When Zhang Chen knelt on the ground and told Zhu Qizhen everything he heard from Qian Sengbao, Zhu Qizhen's face was gloomy. He admired Qian Sengbao very much. He felt that Qian Sengbao's words and actions were in line with his temperament. Therefore, he kept him by his side and treated him as an existence like Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen grew up with Zhu Qizhen. Otherwise, he would not be called Zhu Qizhen's partner. In contrast, Qian Sengbao came to Zhu Qizhen's side later. The reason why he was called Zhu Qizhen's partner was a kind of commemoration. It showed that the emperor did not forget Wang Zhen in his heart. In fact, they were not at the same level at all. If Wang Zhen did something out of line, Zhu Qizhen would at most punish him verbally. After that, he would still be in an important position. But if it was Qian Sengbao, then it would be different. This was someone who could be replaced. After all, he was here to replace Wang Zhen. When he heard that Qian Sengbao, his most trusted eunuch, actually extended his hand into the food business and caused the Southern Ming Empire to lose 10 million taels of silver in one go, Zhu Qizhen had already sentenced him to death in his heart. Zhu Qizhen could tolerate Qian Sengbao's small mistakes, such as accepting bribes from some officials. But when it came to major issues, he absolutely could not tolerate it. Beloved Minister Mao, is this true? Zhu Qizhen still maintained a trace of calmness in his mind. He knew that he could not only listen to one side of the story. It is true. Reporting to Your Majesty, after this subject found out about this matter, this subject has already done an investigation and sent people to question that official from the Yang family. This is the other party's testimony. As Mao Mu spoke, he handed over another memorial, which recorded Wang Tongxing's testimony. The Southern Ming Empire's officials naturally could not do anything to Yang Xia's officials. However, Mao Mu was different. He was originally Yang Qindong's person. Wang Tongxing's mission was to cooperate with him. This time, he would naturally betray Qian Liang and the others. Zhu Qizhen reached out and took the memorial. After reading it, he was burning with anger. He sternly said, "Someone come, bring Qian Xingbao over to Zhen." As soon as the decree was issued, a small eunuch came over and knelt on the ground, trembling as he said, "Your Majesty, there are many officials outside. They are all looking for Qian Fengbao. They said that Qian Fengbao accepted the money but did not do anything. They are clamoring for a refund." What happened? Zhu Qizhen was stunned when he heard this. His gaze naturally fell on Mao Mu, who was standing there with a calm expression. Reporting to Your Majesty, something must have happened because Qian Fengbao accepted the money from those officials. Your Majesty, Qian Fengbao had already informed this subject before. However, the problem is that Qian Fengbao wanted to protect too many people. Many of them are problematic officials. They said very negative things in private. They said that our Southern Ming Empire is not a match for Yang Xia. If we must go to war, it would be like smashing an egg against a rock. There were also some who persuaded our Southern Ming Empire to submit to Yang Xia. It is absolutely impossible to not capture such people. Otherwise, there will be a big problem. Qian Fengbao still wanted to protect them. This subject was also in a difficult position. However, considering the imperial court and our Southern Ming Empire, this subject still sent people to capture them. There was no need to say anything more. Zhu Qizhen had already figured out the whole story. He really did not expect that Qian Fengbao, who had always seemed very loyal, would become like this. He actually wanted to affect the Southern Ming Empire's plan with his own strength. He even won over so many officials. The most important thing was that the other party came knocking on his door. It was truly a display of incompetence and greed. There was no need to use such a person anymore. There was also no need to leave any face. Chapter 1679. Originally, he wanted to reprimand him to see if he had a chance to change. But after the official made such a fuss, Zhu Qizhen gave up all his fantasies. Beloved official Mao, arrest him. This subject obeys. Mao Mu showed a trace of hesitation. Of course, he wouldn't plead for Qian Xingbao, but he still had to act. After all, everyone knew that he was where he was today because of Qian Sengbao's help. This trace of hesitation was seen by Zhu Qizhen. He sighed in his heart at Mao Mu's benevolence and said, "All right, we know what you want to say. But Qian Sengbao's crime cannot be forgiven. You don't need to say any more. Go." Yes. Mao Mu knew that he had done what he needed to do. The next step was to uproot Qian's faction. Without Qian Xingbao, the entire group of eunuchs would be in his hands. This way, he could finally play a role in helping Yang Qindong. Think about it, with the help of these eunuchs, how could any of Nanming's actions escape Mao Mu's eyes? It meant that everything Nanming did would be known by Yang Qindong and Yang Xia. How could this battle continue? Qian Xingbao was arrested. Qian Liang, Song De, and the others were also arrested. When a large group of embroidered uniform guards appeared in front of them, Qian Liang shouted loudly, "Are your dog eyes blind? Don't you know that I'm the commander?" Qian Liang, who still wanted to show off, was met with a series of punches and kicks. He completely became obedient. As for Qian Sengbao, he shouted loudly that he wanted to see the emperor, but no one paid attention to him. He was tied up and brought to the embroidered uniform guards' prison. In the prison, Qian Sengbao finally saw Mao Mu. Different from before, one was a prisoner, and the other was an official. When he saw Mao Mu appear, Qian Sengbao changed his decadent appearance and threw himself on the iron bars in front of the cage. "Eunuch Mao, quickly go see the emperor. Tell him that this official has something to say. This subject is innocent." At this time, Qian Sengbao still had a commanding tone, which really made Mao Mu unhappy. At this time, he didn't need to lower his head like before. He changed his attitude and raised his head. "What? Eunuch Qian still think that the emperor wants to see you at this time? Think about all the wrong things you've done. His Majesty has been accommodating you again and again, but how did you repay him? You embezzled 5 million taels of grain, you really have a big heart." After a round of sarcasm, Qian Sengbao, he roared, I know, it was all you, it was you, to me. You were the one who instigated me to take on this matter. Good, you. How? Looking at Qian Sengbao, who finally understood everything, Mao Mu only shook his head. A defeated general was no longer worth him wasting any effort on this person. She reached into her bosom and took out a piece of white silk and threw it into the prison. The emperor said that since you have served him for so many years, he will give Eunuch Qian a dignified death. Kill yourself. Finishing, Mao Mu turned and left. Ignoring Qian Sengbao's angry shouts and pleas, he headed in the other direction of the prison. Wang Zhua, Chen Sun, and the other court officials were locked up there. After these officials were captured and sent to the discipline prison, they really didn't suffer much. They were arranged to be in a clean single room. Every day, they were fed well. There was paper, ink, and brush in front of them. On the surface, it was for them to report their problems, but on the surface, it was for them to practice calligraphy. After all, there was no entertainment in prison. Practicing calligraphy could calm the mind. Although Mao Mu had come a few times before, he had never had a deep conversation. At that time, his position was not stable. Now, it was different. The chief eunuchs who were older than him had been taken down one by one. The remaining eunuchs were tactfully under him. He could finally do what he wanted in prison. He didn't need to be afraid of others spying on him or reporting him. The first to arrive was Wang Zhua's room. When the embroidered uniform guard opened the door, Wang Zhua was practicing calligraphy. He didn't seem to have any intention of stopping when he saw Mao Mu arrive. He had a feeling that Mao Mu was different from the other eunuchs. However, before the other party revealed his intentions, he wouldn't say anything. This one greets official Wang. When there was no one else in the prison, Mao Mu immediately gave a junior's greeting. Wang Zhua finally put down the brush in his hand. He turned around and said, "Why is Eunuch Mao doing this? Right now, you are an official and I am a prisoner. There is no need for such formalities." "No, official Wang is not a prisoner. You are not guilty. The reason why you were brought here is because I don't want you to work for the Southern Ming Empire. This is all Bugnam of Gojoseon's intention." Mao Mu finally decided to speak the truth. He also believed that at this time, Wang Zhua should know what to do. As expected, when he said this, Wang Zhua was stunned. After a long while, he sighed and said, "Bugnam of Gojoseon really has good methods. He even has his hands in the palace. Hee, if this old man's guess is correct, Eunuch Mao should have the final say in the palace. As official Wang thinks, the stones that should be moved have been moved. Right now, this subject's words still have some weight in the palace." Mao Mu replied modestly. Hee, amazing, amazing. Wang Zhua sighed. When he looked at Mao Mu, his attitude became more serious. However, What ability did this old man have to make Bugnam of Gojosian calculate and arrange things like this? In fact, even if this old man was in court, the Southern Ming Empire wouldn't be a match for Bugnam of Gojosian. This is different. Mao Mu shook his head. Bugnam of Gojosian wants to lead the Han people to the peak of the world. If the Xianxia and the Southern Ming Empire really fight, it will only benefit the other foreign races. This is why this kind of plan is made. I hope official Wang can understand. I understand. Wang Zhua said emotionally. Bugnam of Gojosian's goal is to do so much for the Han people. It really makes me blush with shame. Speaking of which, this old man is about to enter the ground. If there is something I can do for our people before I pass away, it is also my wish. This meant that he was going to help. Mao Mu was waiting for this result. He immediately said happily, if Bugnam of Gojosian knows of official Wang's choice, he will definitely be very gratified and grateful. This old man doesn't dare to accept this. Bugnam of Gojosian should be the one receiving the gratitude of all the Han people. Alright, since it's like this, I hope eunuch Mao can wait a moment. I will write a few letters and trouble you to send them over. They are all this old man's students. They won't dare to disobey this old man's words. Please start writing, official Wang. This little one will be honored to grind ink for official Wang. Mao Mu also didn't expect things to go so smoothly. In fact, for an old official like Wang Zhua, he had seen many wonderful things in his life. He was used to seeing the change of imperial power, the internal strife between officials, and the suffering of the common people. Now that there was finally someone who could change everything, how could they not help? Moreover, these days in prison had already made them understand that since the emperor didn't trust them, there was no need for them to risk their lives for him. It was better to go with the flow. Of course, there was another important reason. Yang Qindong definitely knew what they were doing now. Even if they couldn't enjoy this kindness, they still had children and grandchildren who could be taken care of. In this way, everything they did now would be worth it. Mao Mu grinded ink. Wang Zhua personally wrote more than 10 secret letters. This meant that there were at least 10 officials in the court who would stand on Yang Xia's side in the battle between Yang Xia and the Southern Ming dynasty. There were many Southern Ming officials who were arrested in prison. One could imagine what kind of consequences it would cause. The situation in the Southern Ming dynasty finally stabilized. Mao Mu took over and controlled the entire group of eunuchs. His subordinate, Zhang Chen, became the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. His subordinate, Zhu Hai, became the eunuch in charge of the emperor's daily care. With the help of these people and the embroidered uniform guards in his hands, it was guaranteed that if there were any big movements, Yang Qindong would be the first to know. In Xiqian City, Baiming's observer group had also left and returned. Because Hu Shao was old and couldn't bear the pain of the bumpy journey, he was left in Xiqian City. Queen Hu Yan found a large house outside the palace. When she missed her grandfather, she could go and see him at any time to relieve the pain of homesickness. During this time, Yang Qindong met with the representatives of Baiming's observer group. Among them was the leader of the observer group, the Crown Prince's junior tutor, Grand Scholar and Minister of Justice, Su Yozhen. Speaking of Su Yozhen, his fate was completely changed by Yang Qindong. In history, he made a great contribution in saving Zhu Qizhen. Later, he rebelled and was killed. Now, he was still alive and well. Not only that, but he also became the teacher of Zhu Qiyu's only son, Zhu Jianji. More importantly, Su Yozhen was Yang Qindong's subordinate. This allowed him to maintain an excellent state of mind in the upcoming battle between Baiming and Yang Xia. Su Yozhen was secretly brought to a small courtyard by Yang Qindong at night. His identity couldn't be exposed yet. Under the guidance of the Black Knight Dragon Guard, Su Yozhen saw Yang Qindong in the small courtyard, who was singing to the moon. She quickly walked a few steps forward. When he got close, he knelt on the ground with a thud. Minister Su Yozhen greets the king. Please rise. Yang Qindong helped Su Yozhen up with a smile on his face. He looked like a group of ministers who were enjoying each other's company. Very few people knew the contents of the meeting. Even the Black Cavalry didn't know the details. They only knew that when Su Yozhen was about to leave, he had a satisfied smile on his face. Baiming's observer group finally left. What they saw and heard in Qiqian City would slowly ferment over time. Yang Qindong didn't care anymore, because he was preparing to attack the Southern Ming Empire. Chapter 1680. Zhu Qizhen actually dared to let Chao Jixiang work with Yang Qindong to deal with him, and even created an imperial edict to confer the title of the new Bugnam of Gojoseon. This was equivalent to creating an excellent excuse for Yang Qindong to attack the Southern Ming Empire. He originally thought that it would take some time before he had to mobilize his troops. Everything was brought forward because of this accident. In the third month of 1468 AD, 2 months after the Southern Ming observation group returned, Yang Xia advanced from Guangxi to Guangdong in the name of cleaning up the emperor. The battle was about to begin. Yang Xia sent out the 1st Cavalry Division, the New Army, the 3rd Army, the 2nd, 4th, and 5th Divisions of the Leng Vanguard, as well as the 1st, Meng 2nd, and Meng 3rd Divisions of the Russian Empire. Close to 300,000 troops were split into 3 directions: Guangdong, Hubei, and Jiangxi. The 1st Cavalry Division, the 5th Division of the Leng Vanguard, and the 3rd Division of the Meng 3rd Division of the Jiangxi Vanguard, the New Army, the 4th Division of the Leng Vanguard, and the 2nd Division of the Meng 3rd Division of the Russian Empire went to Hubei. The 300,000 troops moved out with great momentum, causing Guangdong, Hubei, and Jiangxi to be in a state of emergency. Southern Ming capital, Yingtian Prefecture. Kuang Yi, who was already over 80 years old, dragged his sickly body into the palace to meet the Southern Ming Emperor, Zhu Qizhen. Ever since he returned from Qiqian City, Kuang Yi had been sick. After all, he was old and no longer as brave as he used to be. This old man who should have died in the wooden fortress had his fate changed by Yang Qindong. However, he was finally at the end of his life. Give him a seat. Seeing Kuang Yi trembling as he walked into the hall, Zhu Qizhen shouted from the bottom of his heart. Eunuch Zhu Hai hurriedly complied and directed the other eunuchs to bring over a wooden chair with a very thick cushion on it. He then helped Kuang Yi sit on it. After tossing and turning, Kuang Yi's face was slightly red, which was caused by his anger. It seemed that his body really couldn't take it anymore. This old subject has come to see Your Majesty to ask on behalf of the officials of the Ministry of War whether the food and military equipment have been properly prepared and whether the soldiers are sufficient. Kuang Yi took a long while to finish his words. Minister Kuang, the food and weapons have been prepared. It's just that the issue of the source of soldiers is still a little troublesome. I'm afraid it'll take some time. Zhu Qizhen's voice had a trace of fear in it as he spoke. There was nothing they could do about it. The influence of the members of the observer group was too great. Under their influence, it seemed that everyone knew that Yang Xia was extraordinarily powerful. They all knew that if they were to fight with them, they would lose more than they would win. As a result, many young people were unwilling to join the army. After receiving the news, Zhu Qizhen had no choice but to give the order to capture able-bodied men. But even so, the effect was still not good. Many young people ran away from home and hid in the nearby homes. This made it difficult for the supply of reinforcements to arrive. Kuang Yi had been bedridden at home for a while, so he wasn't clear about the matters of the court. When he heard that the army wasn't fully prepared, he couldn't help but anxiously say, Your Majesty, this can't be sloppy. Yang Xia is extremely powerful. In addition, they have countless experienced veterans. Even if we were to fight them one by one, we would still be at a disadvantage. If we don't have enough soldiers, we won't be able to suppress them with numbers. I'm afraid that it will be even more difficult to obtain victory. Yes, Minister Kuang's words, we understand. You should go back and recuperate first. Once you're well, we still need to put you in an important position. Zhu Qizhen didn't want to tell Kuang Yi about the difficulties of the court. First, it was useless. Second, it would only add to his worries. Since it was like this, it was better not to say anything. Seeing that the emperor had agreed, Kuang Yi couldn't force him too much. Trembling, he stood up and took his leave. After leaving Qingjing Hall, he didn't go home. Instead, he went straight to the Ministry of Personnel's Yamen. He wanted to see Minister Chen Sun and have a good talk with him. He wanted him to send capable people to take charge of the recruitment of soldiers. Because he had been kept in the dark by his family, Kuang Yi didn't know that Chen Sun had long been arrested by the embroidered uniform guards. When he arrived at the Ministry of Personnel and saw that the new minister Chao Jia had come to greet him, he had a puzzled expression. He knew this Chao Jia. He had always worked in the Ministry of Personnel. He didn't have any great abilities, but he was good at forming cliques. He had a good reputation among the officials. However, he was still an old official and the Minister of War. What was the meaning of sending Chao Jia? He immediately said, "This old man isn't looking for you. Tell your Minister Chen to come out and greet me." Minister Chen? There's no Minister Chen in the Ministry of Personnel. There's only Minister Chao. Official Kuang, have you become muddle-headed? An official from the Ministry of Personnel gave an answer without thinking too much in order to flatter Chao Jia. Chao Jia didn't say anything to stop his subordinates' rudeness. These old fellows were already so old, yet they still occupied such important positions. He had long found them unpleasant to the eye. Young people also needed to stand out. Thus, he allowed his subordinate to speak to Kuang Yi with such an attitude. Kuang Ye's health wasn't good to begin with. He should be recuperating at home. How could he have been provoked? In front of the emperor, he was given a seat and treated with kind words. Who would have thought that he would receive such treatment in the Ministry of Personnel? He would be directly contradicted by an unknown minor official. Kuang Ye's personality was very straightforward and impulsive. Most of the time, he was the one who didn't follow the rules. This was also one of the reasons why he was able to become the Minister of War. If you weren't strong enough, you wouldn't be able to control the people in the Ministry of War. When had he ever been treated like this? His face immediately flushed red with anger. However, when he thought of the country's great plan, he forcefully restrained himself. He didn't know what had happened recently, so he couldn't help but say, "I want to see Chen Sun." You want to see Chen Sun? Easy. Go to the embroidered uniform guard's discipline prison. That minor official saw that Kuang Yi seemed to have been subdued by him. His face was full of pride and he spoke even more unscrupulously. Discipline prison? For a moment, Kuang Yi didn't quite understand. That's right, the discipline prison. At this moment, Chao Jia opened his mouth. It seemed as if he was explaining, but in reality, he just wanted to anger Kuang Yi. He wanted to use this opportunity to tell those old officials who had the final say in the Ministry of Personnel. They were old, so they shouldn't stand out and give orders. Not only is Chen Sun in the discipline prison, but Wang Zhua, Xia Chong, Shao Xian, and the others are also there. They actually said that the Nanming Empire wasn't a match for Yang Xia and caused a bad influence. They've all been arrested. Chao Jia had just finished speaking when he saw a black figure suddenly collapse in front of him. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Kuang Yi had fainted from anger. Blood was flowing out of the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he had fainted from anger. Considering Kuang Ye's seniority, if he really died in the Ministry of Personnel, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. He hurriedly shouted for people to carry the unconscious Kuang Yi and send him to the Kuang Manor. Then, he sent people to the palace to find an imperial physician. Kuang Yi fainted from anger and his body's condition worsened. When he returned to the manor, he slowly woke up after tossing and turning and spitting out another mouthful of blood. He muttered the words "destroying the Great Wall," and fainted again. 3 days later, Kuang Yi finally breathed his last. This loyal official who had devoted his entire life to building the Great Ming Empire's army finally left the Great Ming Empire at a crucial time. This was all thanks to Mao Mu. He had captured all of the capable officials of the Nanming Empire and replaced them with officials who only knew how to fight for power and profit. In reality, they didn't have much ability. Not only did this cause the Nanming Empire's work to be unable to progress smoothly, it also caused Kuang Yi to faint from anger until he died of illness. However, at this time, no one cared about Kuang Ye's life or death. Even when Zhu Qizhen received the news, he only sent his prince, Zhu Jianxin, to offer his condolences. Speaking of Zhu Jianxin, he was already a young man of 21 years old. He was in his prime. In history, Emperor Xianzong of Ming Dynasty was wise and benevolent. He could be considered a good emperor. However, it was a pity that Yang Chendong's arrival changed everything. First, Zhu Qiyu seized the throne, causing Zhu Qizhen to no longer value familial love. In order to not repeat the same mistake, he didn't give the crown prince too much power. Secondly, Zhu Jianxin's mother was Madame Zhou. Because Empress Qian was in good health, she didn't die early under Mao Mu's care. She even gave birth to another prince for Zhu Qizhen, Zhu Jianyi, who was now 11 years old. His mother wasn't favored and he had a younger brother who could fight for power. As a result, he was never made the crown prince and was only an ordinary prince. This was especially true in the imperial palace. Now that Mao Mu was in power, he only had Zhu Jianyi and the other young masters in his eyes. The other eunuchs naturally knew what to do. Zhu Jianxin's influence became weaker and weaker, and he could only do some unnecessary things. Kuang Yi died. Losing a great general before the great battle had even begun was somewhat unlucky. Although this great battle didn't happen, Kuang Yi wouldn't have been able to last long with his age and body. But things happened so coincidentally that the impact wasn't good. Mao Mu deliberately spread the news. For a time, whether it was in the imperial palace or among the common people, there were many unfavorable comments about the southern Ming Empire. This made the recruitment of soldiers even more difficult. After all, who would send their children to die in a war that they knew they were bound to lose? When the officials trembled and wrote a report about the recruitment of soldiers that didn't go well and presented it to Zhu Qizhen, this emperor who was plagued with misfortune didn't get angry. Or it could be said that he already knew everything and was mentally prepared. He didn't want to be like Kuang Yi and be angered to death by his officials. Zhu Qizhen couldn't help but think of those old officials. If those old officials were willing to help, things wouldn't be as bad as they were now. But when he thought of how those old officials had already been frightened by Yang Xie's strength, he didn't know what kind of problems would occur if he really used them. This idea was suppressed by him. If the recruitment of soldiers isn't going well, then we won't recruit for now. We now have 1.2 million soldiers in our hands and 800,000 soldiers on the front lines. We want them to fight a victory and let our people see the might of our southern Ming Empire's army. Come, write a decree to Guanyin. Have him quickly attack and find an opportunity to destroy Yang Xie's army to strengthen the prestige of our southern Ming Empire. Zhu Qizhen was very straightforward and directly issued a decree to mobilize the army. It was said that 100 words couldn't compare to a single action. Then he would use practical actions to prove it. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.